there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud. Today we're going to be talking about the astrology of February 2026. Hope that you're having a wonderful Friday afternoon out there, staying warm if you are in the northern part of the United States or Canada. It's been pretty darn cold, so I hope that you're keeping warm, and we're going to spend some time together this afternoon kind of trying to make sense of what's going on in the stars and seeing how this is playing out in each other's lives and seeing if we can make some sense of it, friends. So if you are hanging out with me here today, make sure that you leave me a comment in the chat. Let me know where you're stopping in from. It's always beautiful to see friends stopping in. Before we dive into the astrology of February 2026, a couple announcements before we do so. You can find me over at spencermichaud.com. I have all sorts of offerings where you can sign up for astrology readings. I love working with you on an individual basis. We have all sorts of readings, including a natal chart reading called Mythos, which goes and looks at your natal story. What are the repetitive patterns that are playing out in your life? How can we make better choices when faced with similar circumstances, right? This is kind of one of the greatest lessons of astrology, is being able to understand our patterns that we repeat when we're just going through the motions. How do we shine light on that and become aware of it so that we can kind of be a little bit more, I guess, in control is not the right word, but have some agency around things. So go over to spencermichaud.com, click on the Book Now button, and I hope to work with you moving forward. I also have transit readings where I'm helping you prepare for the months ahead, and we can sit down and brainstorm and make a plan together as to what might be the best moves for you moving forward. I also have a webinar store over at spencermichaud.com where I have a number of webinars that are for sale with lots and lots of information. I have Deccan webinars where I'm talking about the 10-degree sections of the zodiac, the mythology, the tarot cards, the fixed stars associated with all of these different areas of the zodiac. I have a beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews, who I worked with in a series called Dignity and Devotion, where we looked at the 7 traditional planets and talked about how to craft a ritual practice and how to utilize those planets in elections and how to create sort of an altar space around them as well, if that is something that interests you. And then I have a Stars and Cards webinar where I'm talking about the connection with tarot and astrology, which is very fascinating, very interesting, and will help to enrich your understanding of the things that we talk about today with the Decans as well. Speaking of my beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews, she has some cool stuff over at Third Coast Mojo, her Etsy account on Third Coast Mojo. She has been working really hard in the laboratory, and this week's feature is called Scientific Method, which is an election from Saturn in Aquarius. We are moving through Aquarius season right now. We have Saturn that's going to be moving into a challenging position in Aries, and having Saturn in one of its preferred signs, Aquarius, might help you to have the objectivity necessary, the mental discipline necessary to do the tough things in our life, to be able to think about unorthodox solutions to the challenges that we're facing, of which there are many right now. So we might need some of that clear-headed thinking right now. And Saturn in Aquarius Scientific Method is a wonderful, wonderful product to help you with those things. So go check out Third Coast Mojo, all sorts of cool stuff there. There's glamour products, there's Venus products, there's Mars products to help you get some energy moving forward. There's new Jupiter and Cancer products to help you bring a little bit of luck into your life. So go check her out, support her over at thirdcoastmojo.com. So finally, we have a newsletter. If you want to know when I'm going live and you want to know what products are being released at Third Coast Mojo, if you want to know what our song of the week is, go subscribe to the newsletter, and you can find out all of that information. It keeps you up to date. You'll never miss a live again if you get the newsletter, because you get a little ping when I'm going live as well. And yeah, all sorts of good stuff over there. And if you want to support the channel today, you can purchase a super chat while I'm live on YouTube, or you can go to buymeacoffee.com and become a patron of the channel over there. Really appreciate everyone who has supported me in the past, and thank you so much for being here today and liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and people who have been able to support through super chats and buy me a coffee as well. All right, friends, let's start taking a look at it. I'm going to check in with my chat here again. Got some friends stopping in. Cosmic Rose is here again. What's up? Says, thank God it's Friday. I hear you. It's been a week, huh? Been a lot going on in the collective, but Rose, it's nice to see you back here again, friend, and hope that we can bring some light into these I don't know, these astrological placements we're going to be going through. Aditi Agrawal 1868. Nice to see you, friend. Hope that you're doing well. Hope that everything's going well your way. Thank you for sharing your birth information here, friend. Today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about the astrology of February 2026. So we're kind of doing a big overview. If you want to reach out for an individual reading, you can go over to my website, spencermichaud.com. But thank you for stopping by, friend. Scam Pastrini is here. What's up? Says, good afternoon, guys. Nice to see you back again, friend. Hope everything's going well your way as well. Okay, so let's take a look at this astrology of February. Some pretty big astrology, right? Some pretty big astrology coming up in February. So let's kind of look at it from a 30,000 foot view first, and then we'll kind of start zeroing in on some of the details around it. So big picture thoughts, a lot of Uranus squares, Saturn moving into Aries, a Neptune conjunction with Saturn. We've got some planets switching directions, and we're going to start eclipse season. So first off, everything's squared Uranus. We've got Mercury, Venus, the Sun, and Mars all making a square to Uranus over the course of the month in Taurus. So all of these planets from Aquarius 3 to Taurus 3, a lot of trying to fix things that may have fallen into disrepair, a lot of trying to think of outside the box ideas to liberate us from things that we might be trying to revisit from our past, some repetitive narratives that we're trying to unravel from. This decan of Aquarius is called The Knot in Austin Coppock's 36 Faces book. So we might be trying to unravel some of the things that make us feel stuck, and we might have to shake things up a little bit to do so. So that's part of it. All of these planets that are going to square Uranus are eventually going to conjoin the North Node in Pisces. So an increase of that Piscean energy, which I'll break down in depth for you as we go along. The Saturn-Neptune conjunction is pretty big news as well. Saturn is going to be moving into its fall in Aries, a place that's not super comfortable, the house of Mars, the place where the rule making is maybe a little bit more based on individual desires rather than the needs of the collective. We could see a rise in authoritarianism and of fear of authority, things of that nature as well. So we'll try to unpack that. Saturn and Neptune moving into Aries 1 also has some themes around colonization and annexation of countries, properties, etc. We'll take a look at that. I hope that we can move forward with that with a different narrative potentially, but sometimes when we have these outer planets, we want to look back at history and see what was going on during these periods, and I will do that a little bit for you to discuss the last Saturn-Neptune conjunction, as well as the last Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries, which is informative as well. Mercury and Venus are going to be moving through Pisces this month. One of those planets is very happy in Pisces. Venus is exalted there. Mercury is not so happy. It's in its double debility. It has a detriment and fall condition in that place, and it's also going to be retrograde. So we'll break that down and see what kind of things that we could utilize that type of Mercury for. If one planet is in really good condition, like Venus, how do we lean into Venusian qualities? If Mercury isn't in the greatest shape, how do we sort of mitigate that? How do we avoid some of the worst pitfalls of a debilitated Mercury and one that is going to be retrograde? Uranus is going to station direct this month, as well as Mercury retrograding. So we'll give you all the dates. We'll give you all the Kazemi dates for all this, when the planet is renewed in the heart of the sun, when it emerges from the beams. We'll tell you some ways to maybe work through some of the potential challenges of a retrograde Mercury. And then finally, by the end of the month, we're going to be starting eclipse season. We have one eclipse this month, the second of which will come in March. So eclipses often come in pairs or in threes. So we'll have the beginning of eclipse season at the end of February, and then we'll kind of get you prepared for the we'll talk a little bit about the one in March, but we're going to talk mostly about the new moon solar eclipse in Aquarius today. It's kind of a big one. It's the first one that we're seeing here, I think, hosted by Saturn in Aries, if I'm not mistaken. So a lot of potential changes that could be coming through this eclipse season. Okay, so those are sort of our big picture thoughts. I'm checking back in with our chat here again. Uh-oh. Cosmic Rose says, I stopped a burglar that was trying to knock on my front door at 4 a.m. Oh my goodness. Wow. Well, there you go. I'm glad that you're safe, friend, and it sounds a little scary. Gavin is here. What's up, Gavin? Nice to see you. Hope everything's going well your way, my friend. Let's see. Okay. So let's start taking a look at our medium range view. So we've got those big picture things going on in February. Let's talk a little bit about the lunations, the ingresses of planets into new signs, solar phases, and out of bounds planets. The lunations for the month. We have a full moon to start our month at 13 degrees of Leo. So the sun is at 13 degrees Aquarius. The moon is at 13 degrees of Leo. So we're starting off with trying to balance out our individual desires, our ability to shine our light versus having to work through potentially some questions of visibility. I think that when we have this full moon with the Aquarius sun and the Leo moon, trying to figure out how to utilize our spotlight correctly or in service of the collective as well is one thing that we can look at and examine. We have a last quarter moon at 20 degrees of Scorpio on February the 9th. So we might need to release some of our illusions. We might need to release some of the things that kind of blind us to our realities to be able to move on from situations into our new reality. On the 17th of February, we have that new moon solar eclipse I was talking about at 28 degrees of Aquarius. It is going to be squared Uranus, that new moon solar eclipse squared Uranus. So kind of a potentially a little bit chaotic. It's going to be hosted by Saturn in Aries that's making an application to Neptune. So a big one that has been fairly well circled, I think, by a lot of astrologers for this year as being a pretty important cycle. We have our first quarter moon after that on the 24th at 5 degrees of Gemini once the sun has moved into Pisces. So with that first quarter moon, we might be trying to bring something new into reality, but there might be some tension between our old stories, our old narratives, our old mental loops that we keep going through sometimes. Oftentimes we get stuck in certain life stories and we have to re-examine some of those life stories. And I think that this first quarter moon on the 24th is going to help us to understand our options, right? So that we don't have to keep repeating the same patterns over and over again. So that might be a little bit uncomfortable at first, but I think there's an exploratory component to that one. So lunate our ingresses. So those are our lunations for the month. Our ingresses are planets moving into new signs. On February the 6th, Mercury moves into its exile and its fall in Pisces. This is a really unique kind of placement for a planet because it has both its exaltation and its domicile in Virgo and both of its exile and fall in Pisces. So double debilities, really difficult place for Mercury. It is good for artistic endeavors. It's good for figurative language. It's good for poetic thinking. It's good for art. It's not great for linear schedules and linear thinking. This is one where we may say one thing, but there is a layer of meaning underneath that is different from what comes out of our mouth, and that can lead to some confusion. So we really have to double check all of our details and make sure when we're communicating that our messaging is being received appropriately, right? So asking a lot of questions, checking in, not making assumptions when we say stuff with Mercury and Pisces. But also there's a lot of emotions behind what we say. There could be a lot of swings of emotion from the heights of ecstasy to the depths of despair. And this is something that we can see throughout Mercury in a really emotional water sign like Pisces. On the 10th, Venus moves into Pisces as well. And this is a little bit of a different story. Venus is a planet that likes to bring things together. And Pisces has been known as sort of a little bit of a solvent energy, like a boundary dissolver. So when we dissolve the things that keep us from one another, that can be a really beautiful experience. We can see our ability to appreciate the beauty in everything and everyone, the universality, the compassion for other people. We might be feeling what other people are feeling rather than just our own small experience that we have. I've been really kind of enjoying a new show I've been watching recently. It's called North of North, and it's about the Inuit culture up in the very north of the Arctic Circle. And it's just so beautiful to see just something, just kind of how a different culture is living, right, in a completely different part of the world, and like, but also seeing what unifies us. This is what Venus and Pisces might be helping us to see: is how can we like see someone who's living a very, very different life and experience, but also recognize that they're going through similar challenges that we all do. And recognizing that universality is going to be really, I think, heightened and accentuated with Venus and Pisces. Okay, Saturn's going to move into Aries on February the 13th. So this is a big ingress for the year. This is something that Saturn only changes signs every few years here, and it's a drop in dignity for Saturn, right? We had a little preview of this in early 2025, but this is one where, you know, we're trying to figure out what kind of laws and what kind of arrangements and fabric of society, what kind of blueprint we want to create. And this is one where there might be individuals acting in their own best interest rather than in the interest of the collective, and that could be really painful. On a personal level, it could also bind us to making a new start. It could bind us to like having to fight for something. I would say also it might bind us to reject that which we are not. And this can be true in a lot of different circumstances. You could see this from all sides of the political aisles, people rejecting what they feel that they are not. Sometimes we have to reject what we see in the collective as abuses of people in our communities. So this could be the rejecting of that which we are not. But that's specific to the first decan of Aries, and I'll bring that into focus as we talk about that in the daily breakdown. The sun moves into Pisces on the 18th of February, so a shift from a Saturn-ruled sun to a Jupiter-ruled one. I'm kind of looking forward to all of these planets moving into Pisces, especially because they're going to be hosted by an exalted Jupiter. So Jupiter in Cancer still for the entirety of February and stationing direct in March. We're going to be, I think, a lot of the isolation that we might be feeling, maybe even some of the fear that we might be feeling starts to become maybe a little bit alleviated once those planets all start moving into Pisces, but we'll see. Solar phases. So solar phases are when a planet either stations retrograde or direct, when it emerges from under the beams of the sun and becomes visible again, when it goes cazimi or in the heart of the sun, conjoins the sun to be renewed. A couple of those this month. On the 3rd of February, we have Uranus stationing direct at 27 degrees of Taurus. Okay, so an outer planet shifting directions. Maybe we'll start to see some new ways of working through challenges or things that have fallen into disrepair or that have fallen into corruption. This is what Uranus and Taurus 3 can do. It says, hey, let's review our physical processes and say, did this work? Did this not work? How do we become patient, or how do we fix things that have fallen into disrepair? On the 11th of February, Mercury emerges as the evening star at 7 degrees of Pisces. Now, this same day, Mercury is going to enter its retrograde shadow at 8 degrees of Pisces. So on February the 11th, it's going to become visible, but then enter its retrograde shadow. And a retrograde shadow is the degree that the planet is going to return to during its retrograde cycle. So pay attention to the messages that you receive around February the 11th, because something will come to light that you may have to redo, right? That you may have to revisit. And a lot of it could have to do with what we assumed about our beliefs. I think that in this time period that we're all living through, which is a little bit, I don't know if it's exactly unprecedented. It might be unprecedented for us as individuals in this moment. I think that when we look back at cycles of history, there have been times where we've seen things like this go on in different parts of the world. But I think that what happens when you have your societies and your realities shaken up like this, it puts into question a lot of the things that we took for granted as a culture, as a society, and a lot of things that we, held up as our sacred cows, so to speak. And when you're seeing these things happening and unfolding in your communities, it should shift some of your belief systems. And I think that this is what we're really going to be going through in February, is a lot of the assumptions that we made from either our childhood, our youth, a lot of those things are going to be turned upside down. And it's going to take us collectively writing a new story, writing a new set of beliefs, one that might be more compassionate, one that might be more taking into account the needs of our brothers or sisters, our community members, rather than just trying to get ours, so to speak, as individuals. I think this is going to be extremely important moving forward in the months and weeks ahead. So how do we start questioning our beliefs to the point where we can make those changes that we need to make to bring about fairness and equality and safety, not just for ourselves, but for everyone, right? Okay. Finally, on the 26th of February, Mercury is going to station retrograde at 22 degrees of Pisces. So this is a Mercury retrograde in a place where it is fallen and exiled. And this is interesting to me because I was doing some research in the past few weeks around fallen or exalted planets in Eastern Jyotisha astrology, Vedic astrology, where a planet can actually act like its opposite when it is in one of those two dignities, exaltation or fall. So I'm very curious to see if Mercury retrograding in Pisces may potentially be acting sort of like an exalted Mercury in Virgo instead. I was looking back through my journals with this, and this period, this actually happened in early 2025 for a few days. And what I found with that is I was doing a lot of commerce. I was doing a lot of exchange. This was my partner and I were creating a food forest in our backyard. We were ordering plants and trees from and seeds, right, to be able to restore our land to more productive natural habitat, but also to grow food. And I think that for the most part, it worked out very well, but there were some things that were delayed or that didn't make it, right? So there was a retrograde component to it, but man, there was a lot of exchange. So it was interesting to look at that and see if a retrograde Mercury may actually be functioning in the opposite capacity. It's going to Cazimi on the 7th of March, and it's also going to station direct on the 20th of March. So it'll Cazimi at 16 degrees of Pisces and station direct at 8 degrees of Pisces, that place that it went back to in its shadow. We've got a couple out of bounds planets this month. No malefic enclosures from what I can tell. I usually comb through and look for those. We had a number of those types of situations in the last few months. We also had Hellenistic void of course moons. We're finally past that phase as I'm recording this in late January. I hope you all survived that well. But none of those conditions this month. But we do have an out of bounds moon from February the 9th to February the 15th. And then again, the moon will be out of bounds from February 23rd to the 28th. So those are periods where we might be pushing our bodies a little bit further than we normally might be feeling a little bit extra emotional. We might be having memories about things that we wouldn't normally have memories about. Lunar significations, right? We might be feeling a little bit more, I don't know, like we want protective of our families, protective of our people in our communities. That could be like that maternal figure of the moon. So put those on your calendar. If you're feeling extra emotional, be like, is the moon out of bounds? Maybe it is. But that's the only planet that's out of bounds this month, which is interesting. Okay, so that's our medium range view, right? Let's see. Rose says, I paid attention and benefited from Mercury retrograde since 1995. I mark it on my calendar for the whole year ahead. Yeah, it's interesting. Like I feel Like there are some theories around a retrograde Mercury is if you have Mercury retrograde in your own chart, that you might have a little bit of a easier time because people are sort of on your wavelength now. I've experienced some of that. The specific technique we're talking about here is based on the actual dignity of Mercury being in its fall. But it's interesting to experiment with it, right? I will also say too, Mercury retrograde isn't really something to fear, I guess. The way that this is one part of pop astrology that people really latch onto and say, "Oh, Mercury retrograde, everything's going to go wrong with my travel, computer, etc." Now, those things can happen, but this happens so often. It happens 3 times during the year. This year, Mercury is going to retrograde in the water signs. It's just part of a cycle of Mercury that is actually, it happens all the time. So sometimes we need to review things. Sometimes we need to slow down. Sometimes we need to ask for clarification. I think that it frustrates people in Western civilization often because we always want to be going fast. We always want to have instant gratification. We always are attached to number go up, growth economics. And that's just not the way nature works. And we are, as human beings, are part of nature. And being able to appreciate the slowdown, to be able to appreciate reviewing our processes before we make important decisions, I think can be a really, really healthy process moving forward. So nothing to fear, really, friends. But there are little things that you can do. Make sure that your data's backed up. Take your time. Like if you have travel plans, give yourself extra time to get where you're going. Those are all just very common sense Mercury retrograde things, but not something to get too upset about. Javiera says, "Hey guys, I'm going to the doctor's, but I'll be right back. Hopefully I make it. Just wanted to say hello." Nice to see you, Javiera. Hope that everything's going well with you over at your appointment today. So appreciate you stopping in. Rose says, "My natal Mercury is conjunct my Uranus too." Yeah, so this could be just a type of energy where, a lot of your mental processes could be Uranian in nature, like kind of thinking outside the box, like aspiring to be like the gods sometimes. These Uranus is sort of related to that story of Prometheus was stealing fire from the gods and giving it to humanity. My Mercury in my chart is retrograde in Cancer in the 12th, but it has an exact trine to Uranus in Scorpio. So there's a Uranian quality to my thinking as well. So it's very it's interesting to see all these beautiful relationships. And another reason, friends, reach out if you don't know all the things about your chart. Like there can be different perspectives to get by reaching out to your friendly traditional astrologer and getting a reading. Okay, so let's start breaking this down in detail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by teaching you about the decans. So what we do with the decans here is we're going to look at how the decans are unfolding via the position of the sun. I like doing this solar decan examination because what it does is it gives us a spotlight. It gives us something that we're sharing as a collective and sort of a canvas that a lot of these other themes are painted on. I've been thinking a lot about the sun lately, especially as the sun has moved into Aquarius, traditionally a place of its exile, right? A place where it is opposite its preferred sign in Leo. And it's in the house of Saturn. It's in a place that's related to darkness, right? To winter in a lot of significations in historical treatments of Saturn. I've been thinking a lot about the sun and its ability to give generously and with vitality. This book I've been reading, I've been sharing little bits and pieces, but Sacred Economics has a great passage about ancient civilizations that worshipped the sun, and they worshipped it because it had such great generosity. It caused food to grow. It helped the flowers to open. It brought us warmth. It brought us life. I think flipping the narrative on the sun could be really fortuitous moving forward. Flipping the narrative from one of like individuality, of individual focus, of kingly authority, of trying to, I don't know, be some sort of ruler with maybe a selfish bent to it, to one of generosity. The sun can be a place of great, great generosity. So when we're looking at the sun in Aquarius too, we're looking at it through the lens of an exiled sun. And here you see the Six of Swords represented in this decan. So this is the place between 10 degrees Aquarius and about 20 degrees, 19 degrees and 59 minutes if you want to be specific. And this decan is called the Lord of Earned Success, or the Lord of Science in Book T and Book of Thoth. Austin Coppock calls it Heaven and Earth. It's a Mercury face. So each of these decans has sort of a planetary like sub-ruler or mask, I guess you could say. That's why they call them the faces. So it's a Saturn-ruled sign, Aquarius, but it has this kind of disguise that's mercurial in this particular area. And Mercury is a planet that moves things from point A to point B. It is a traveler of liminal spaces. It moves very quickly. It is a messenger. And this decan is really a lot about liminal spaces, about being between worlds, about being between situations. So the time period that we're going to examine here, this starts technically on the 29th of January and goes to February 8th. But for our intents and purposes, we're going to be looking at February 1st through the 8th. We might be in a transition phase. We might be trying to move away from something in the past and move forward towards something in the future. We might have to come up with innovative ideas to do so. Okay, we might have to build bridges between the worlds. We need to navigate those liminal spaces in our life. Sometimes what we're doing is we're trying to bridge the gap between our idealism, which often I would say that people think of the most perfectionistic signs. Virgo is one that people are like, oh, perfectionism, Virgo, right? I would argue, and this is something I learned from my studies with nightlight astrology. This would really kind of turn my mind on to this. The air signs, I think, have a good argument for being some of the most perfectionistic. And a lot of it is because it's based on idealism. It's not necessarily based on something that we see physically manifested. It's based on what we wish something was like, these kind of platonic, idealized forms. So I think Aquarius, in its own way, can be extremely idealistic. And the idealism is, I guess it's applied in different ways in the different air signs, right? In Gemini, this idealism is like this exploratory, like little bits of information. We're going to explore all the ideas, right? In Libra, we might have some idealism associated with our relationships and with how our social relationships are. But in Aquarius, there could potentially be some idealism as to the very structures of our societies, the way that we relate to one another. So how do we get from the idealism of how we want to structure our societies, our communities, etc., and the reality of what we're experiencing? Now, for many of us here today, the gap between our ideal societies and what we're experiencing in our society is widening by the day. I think that also creates an opportunity. When we see some of the old structures crumbling, we have the opportunity to build something different, build something better, build something new. So how do we survive that transitionary time is what we're going to be looking at here. Now, there's a spirit in this decan called Phobos, which is a son of Mars, right? It is the spirit of rout of soldiers from battle. Now, rout is a fancy word for scattering in all different directions, retreat, saying, oh no, we're scared, right? It's like when you see, like if you use the Lord of the Rings, right? You see the riders of Rohan coming across over the hill, and all the orcs start scattering, right? By the way, there was someone that was sharing something around that where they were, it's fascinating to me what people apply their own set of beliefs towards these archetypal stories. And someone was making the argument that Tolkien was pro border control. That was just had to laugh. And I shared a reel from a woman who kind of tore down that argument completely, because I think Tolkien was one of the, I think, more anti-fascist authors of the 20th century. and showed the value of people coming together from different communities, different races, different lands, to support one another, to overcome a very oppressive fascist regime that wanted to control people. So I think that that's a really interesting kind of, there's so much dichotomy in the way that we view things just based on our own perspectives, right? So Sun in Aquarius too, we may have some fear around things that are going around in our collective. We may feel like retreating or leaving some of our circumstances. I would say, and I've talked about this a little bit in my Decanic class, Aquarius is kind of the quintessential sign, I think, associated with immigration. I think it is one that shows people moving from a situation that is no longer tenable and trying to find a new situation, trying to go off into the unknown, trying to, you can literally see people going from one shore to the other. And this is something that I think is really fascinating. I think that this decan is probably the most balanced of the Aquarius decans, having associations with Tiferet. Tiferet is a solar sephira in the Kabbalistic tree of life that is very much about being centered. It is in the middle of the tree. It is about balance. So we might be in the middle of leaving something behind. Aquarius 1, just to review, we won't spend too much time on it, but Aquarius 1 shows a conflict and a defeat. Austin calls it the mark of exile in 36 faces. This is where we have this kind of smug winner and then people going off into the fringes of society, sometimes willingly because they don't agree with injustices they're seeing around them. Here in Aquarius 2, we have the process of moving from one place to the other, and then we will eventually get to Aquarius 3, where we're finally just leaving it behind. There is still communication between the known and the unknown during Aquarius 2. But when we get to Aquarius 3, it's like, okay, it's time to go, right? It's time to go. And there might be a lot of us thinking about what our options are as we see the rise of fascism and authoritarianism in America. Like, the other countries are looking kind of nice at this point, But I think that's, some people may choose that route. I think the other thing that we can think about is how do we get from point A of what we're experiencing now to point B of, creating the type of place that we want to live in that is based on kindness and compassion rather than this violence that we're experiencing right now. All right. Cosmic Rose says, I resemble that remark that says Aquarius moon was a grand air trine. I don't know what that remark means, Cosmic Rose. Maybe there's a different way of stating that, but let's see here. So the first thing that we see during the Sun in Aquarius 2 is the full moon. So let's take a look at the full moon in Leo. Let's bring the chart up and we'll look at it together. And we'll pull this off here. Okay. So here is our full moon. Let's go right to the full moon. What do you say? Here's our full moon, February 1st. Now I'm going to spend an entire broadcast on this next week. But some themes that we might be working through with the full moon. First of all, we have the sun hanging out in Aquarius 2. We just broke down some of the significations of that particular decan. We also have Venus traveling with the sun in that decan. We have Mars moving through the first 10-degree section of Aquarius and Mercury also moving through the third 10-degree section of Aquarius. Of course, Pluto is hanging out there as well. So this huge stack up, Pluto, Mars, the sun, Venus, and Mercury all hanging out in Aquarius. And all of these planets are going to be kind of making this whole sign opposition to the moon in Leo. We do have a whole sign square with Uranus. So we're going to start to feel the tension between the Aquarius planets and Uranus. Now, this is going to get much, much, much more acute when we get to the new moon solar eclipse in Aquarius 3, when that square becomes much tighter. But this is an initiation into that energy. Now, how is Leo 2 different than Aquarius 2? Well, so our collective, I don't know, mindset may be focused on moving from point A to point B, navigating the liminal space. What Leo 2 shows us, and I don't have the Deccan flashcard up here, but I'll show you the tarot card associated with it. It's really associated with a homecoming. So in one of these decans, we have someone who is leaving their home behind, going off into the unknown. And then we have in Leo 2, a homecoming, right? This is the Lord of victory, right? The crown of laurels, they call it. And this is someone who's coming back home from victorious from battle, rather than someone leaving after a defeat. So how do we balance out going off into the unknown, but coming back into alignment, I think, with our authenticity? I think that's really what the essence of Leo 2 is how do we become our most authentic selves? And this could be challenging. Like we are being asked to transition as a society into some kind of new arrangement. What role do we play as individuals within that co-creation of that new story? What is our most authentic self in that story? Not everyone has the same role to play. This is something that I've been seeing a lot of people talking about, is when we are faced with great oppression and when we're organizing a resistance to great oppression, not everybody's going to be boots on the ground, the protesters. Some people, they don't have the ability to do so based on their circumstance, whether it's through, maybe not having the physical ability to do that or the time to do so. Some people are working, like things and doing, not that people protesting are working, that sounds terrible, but everyone has a different role to play, right? And I think that appreciating that, some people are going to be organizers. Some people are going to be educators. Some people are going to be on those front lines of the protest. Some people are going to be observers. Some people are going to participate through voting with their dollar, through boycott of companies that support authoritarian tactics and regimes. There's all sorts of different levels to this, and it takes all of those levels to participate, to be able to make real change. So I think that one of the main things I would say about this full moon in Leo is figure out what you have to contribute to that, what your role is in your most authentic expression, and then be true to yourself, right? Don't try to be something that you're not within that. Be true to the core essence of who you are, and know that each individual role is very important, right, for a collective movement. All right. Okay. Cosmic Rose says, you were talking about air signs being perfectionistic. Cosmic Rose says, I resemble that mark with Aquarius moon and grand air trine. I get it now. Thank you for that clarification. So Rose is saying she's probably pretty perfectionistic, idealistic, I would guess. Oh, man. Okay. So with the full moon, we're going to start seeing that unfolding, right, into a few things. So let's talk about this. So we've got the next day, Uranus is going to station direct. So let's go forward a few hours here. And we've got Uranus stationing direct right around here. Earlier in the day, I guess you could say. Maybe a little. We're waiting for the numbers to turn from red to black, which in my program is an indication of direct movement. Well, here we go. Let's just do this. So 9:33 p.m., end of the day on the 3rd. Uranus stationing direct, the ability to start moving forward with some of the changes that we've been examining as Uranus has been moving retrograde. We've probably been examining some things in our lives via Taurus 3. Now, this is important to break down too. Let's take a look at this Deccan flashcard here for Taurus 3. Taurus 3 shows us a Seven of Pentacles Rider-Waite Tarot, where we have a farmer or a gardener who is kind of assessing some damage to his crop. You can see here the little brown leaves in amongst the green, and he's resting on his gardening tool and saying, you know what, this is frustrating. This is blight. This card has some history with the potato famines in Ireland in the 1840s, of which Pamela Coleman Smith would have been aware of, based on the time period that she was creating these images. So there may be something in our life that we've been trying to fix. Maybe something's gone wrong. Maybe it wasn't necessarily our fault. Maybe it was. Maybe there was something that was outside of our control. I know that in my own community right now, we are experiencing extreme cold. Like today, it's probably maybe single digits with wind chills in the negatives. And one of the things that happens is things start to not function, like pipes freeze. And that's not necessarily somebody's fault if they aren't aware of the weather coming. I guess there's things you can do to mitigate that, right? But there are certain things that happen that are sometimes acts of nature. And what that can do, that I've witnessed, is that can actually be a great unifier, right? So Uranus and Taurus 3 can actually be a great unifying experience, because when we deal with crisis, with things that are outside of our control, like weather events, oftentimes you'll see people come together as a community. I have a neighbor down the street that has been helping to plow part of our sidewalk. Like we had a really nice conversation. They were born in Canada, and kind of a salt of the earth person, just kind of really tough, and but really funny. And we got to talking, and the next day, after we had talked about kind of our snow removal process, we saw her bringing her four-wheeler down that had a plow attached and just plowing the whole block. And that was really cool. It was like seeing, oh, okay, we're all dealing with this crisis together. We're all trying to find new ways of repairing the damage that nature has wrought upon us, or just deal with it. And it's not necessarily, that nature is evil or bad. It's just that we just have to deal with it as a collective. And all of these Aquarius planets are going to be squaring Uranus. So what I want you to think about is, I want you to think about Aquarius 3. And when we get to the first square, which is going to happen early in the month, I'll break down Aquarius 3 for you in advance, because I think that understanding the relationship between this decan, which has a spirit in it called the Liti. The Liti were these kind of hobbled old women that came and followed behind a demon called Eight. And Eight translated to rashness or ruin. And what Eight would do is Eight would come down and step on people's heads to get where he wanted quickly, right? And the Liti would follow behind, offering up repentant prayers, right? Offering up prayers to help fix something. So there's this energy of trying to fix something, especially if it's maybe a natural disaster type of thing. It could also be just something that is out of our control, like a potato blight. Could be something in our homes that just over the course of time starts to go wrong. Like one of the things we've been dealing with this week is, because we have an old home, our windows are single pane and very, very leaky. So we've been trying to work through fortifying the windows so that all the heat just doesn't pour out of it. And there can be frustrating moments trying to fix some of these things. So be gentle with yourself, be patient. I think that's the other thing that Uranus and Taurus 3, I think, can help us with, is potential being patient and working through the process. Cosmic Rose says, pipe insulation is good for many things. Yes, there you go. I used to write my heavy tripod leg suit. Yeah, right? A good advice, right? So that we don't want our pipes to freeze. We want to insulate them. That is an insurance policy against something that could go wrong. And this is something that people talk about a lot with Taurus 3, is check on your insurance policies. Check on your remediations for protecting yourself against things that could become bigger problems down the line. So this is a lot of what I think we're going to be dealing with these squares with Aquarius is how do we, start to look at our emergency plans? How do we mitigate future problems, right? By taking care of things in advance. Okay, so this is Uranus stationing direct. And the first aspect that we have is Mercury making a square to Uranus, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up Aquarius 3. We'll do a little preview of Aquarius 3. So this is February the 5th. And I think this is a good examination because not only is Mercury going to be making that square, but Venus is going to be making that square. The sun's going to be making that square. Mars is going to be making that square. Mars-Uranus square is going to be a little tricky, okay? And this is going to be a narrative that's going to be unfolding. And the order of the planets is interesting to me. Mercury is a planet that asks questions. Mercury is a planet that, casts things into doubt. So we may be asking questions about how to fix something, how to repair something, with Mercury making that square. When Venus makes the square, we could be getting some help around it. We could be asking for assistance, like trying to harmonize. The sun could bring us an awareness of the problem that we didn't really understand at the beginning. And then Mars says, hey, let's take action on this, right? This is finally time to take action. So that's the kind of the narrative that I think is unfolding. Now, Aquarius 3 shows us the Seven of Swords. And the Seven of Swords is also called, in Book T, the Lord of Unstable Effort, or the Lord of Futility. I'm just thinking about this as we are moving through this decan, as to how frustrating it can be sometimes to try to fix things. I didn't have one of my best moments this past week where I was trying to put some plastic on the windows of our old house, and I'd spent like an hour and some change doing it, and I got real frustrated because when we did the the plastic you put on with like the tape, and then you take like a heat gun or like a hair dryer and you try to make it all, like, get all the wrinkles out of it. Well, I was doing that, and what it was doing was pulling all the tape off of it, and some of my Virgo stellium OCD just got really, really triggered, and I kind of had a little meltdown, and I kind of grabbed all of the plastic and the tape and just kind of had a crash out, like if you've seen all those kind of videos of like dad having a crash out. I had mine because it was just not working the way that I was hoping. It was partially my fault for trying to do this during the void of course moon. But this is something that we may experience a little bit with Aquarius 3. This effort that we're trying to do to something, but it's not working out the way that we want it to, and we might be feeling a lot of frustration. This decan is one that is very much associated with revisiting something, but getting so frustrated with it that you're like, I'm done. I'm not going to do it anymore. I'd rather go do something else. The resolution to our story was we got some like weather stripping tape, and instead of putting the plastic on the windows, we just started taping the gaps. It was like the second best option in that moment, right? And that might be something that we have to make adjustments with. If the first plan that we have with all of these squares to Uranus doesn't work out, how do we pivot? How do we pivot to the second best option? How do we untie some of those karmic knots? The spirit of Cyrus in this decan, Cyrus was the Egyptian god that was severed into many different pieces by his brother-in-law, Set, the brother of his wife, Isis. And Isis had to collect all the pieces of his body, reassemble him, and eventually they copulated, and the god Horus was born. But they couldn't, well, first of all, they couldn't find the phallus, right? They couldn't find the implement. And I thought this was kind of funny. I was thinking about this the other day. John Wayne Bobbitt actually is, I don't know if that's a name you've heard in a while, but back in, the late 80s, early 90s, he was, of course, he had his member severed, and there was a lot of news stories around that. And as I was reading about Aquarius 3, I was like, I wonder if this guy had Aquarius 3 stuff. And sure enough, his midheaven was in Aquarius 3, and he had another planet right on there or something like that, where that's what he's known for. This is what he's known for publicly, like losing his member and trying to reassemble all of these things. So we might be trying to piece together things from our past. Maybe not in the same way as John Wayne, but we might be revisiting a story. We might be revisiting an old relationship. We might be revisiting an old problem that has fallen into disrepair. We might be revisiting something that we thought we had fixed, but it's shown that we didn't, and we have to go back and do it again. And eventually, what I think this decan shows us is that this isn't a permanent resurrection, that this is something that we're revisiting to learn something, to take our wisdom with us, these 5 swords of wisdom with us, but leaving these 2 swords behind, and then kind of knowing when to quit. This might be a situation where we know when to let go, okay? So with all these planets squaring Uranus, we might have to know when to say when, saying this situation, this isn't tenable anymore. We've tried to fix it. We've tried to repair something, but this might be the time where we just have to say, throw our hands up and be like, you know what? It's not worth it, okay? Only you will know what that means for you in your own life, but take a look at the area of your chart where Aquarius and Taurus fall, and there probably is going to be some tension between those topics, right? There's probably going to be some tension between the topic associated with Taurus and the one associated with Aquarius. And there could be some shocking splits. You might be so fed up with something that you shock people around you and say, I didn't really expect that. I didn't expect them to leave. I didn't expect this project to not work out. I didn't expect this relationship. I didn't expect this person to walk out, you know? There could be things like that going on with this square. All right. Devin is here. What's up, Devin? Selene's Gateway says Uranus and Taurus 3, ingenuity and problem solving intensified by Algol. Yeah, and we might need to be ingenuous, right? We might have to practice that ingenuity to move forward and into the unknown, to separate us from things that have been a source of frustration for a lot of our lives. Rose says, don't you pit the plastic on the frame and then tape the frame to the window? No, that's not how we did it. That might work. Without going too far into the details here, the challenge that we were experiencing is, first of all, we have a very old house that has sort of like puzzle piece window frames where it's not flat. There's all sorts of different levels, and that makes it really difficult to attach the plastic. The other thing that was happening is we have blinds on the windows, and we were trying to figure out a way to still use the blinds, and that was pretty frustrating too. If it would have been a lot easier just to put it, on the window, and the blinds wouldn't be functional anymore, but so it goes. But long story short, now there's just tape, weather stripping tape in the worst offending gaps. But I digress. Okay. Isn't that mind what we do when we work and solve and heal old buttons? Yeah, I mean, this is where we're going to be kind of revisiting some challenges in our life, but not permanently. Like, think about it as let's say you broke up with somebody. Like, let's just use a relationship as an example. Let's say you broke up, but you had some unfinished business. You're like, this didn't feel right. You got back together with someone temporarily, and then in that temporary reunion, you learned something that you needed to know about why that relationship didn't work out, so that you don't idealize it anymore, right? You say, you know what? We needed to get back together for this very temporary time, just to figure out that we weren't right for each other, or something like that. That's an example of taking that wisdom with you, but not a permanent resurrection. Something new has to be born out of this situation, in my opinion. All right. Freshtopia. Who's Freshtopia? I know who Freshtopia is. Is Freshtopia here? Oh, there we go. There's different kinds of insulation plastic kits. The one we had was designed to be directly applied. Yes. So this is Tanya, aka at Freshtopia. Like Tanya Spencer's harm reduction home renovation adventures. Yeah, it was. Everyone's gonna have little things like that come up when you have all sorts of responsibilities. Anyone who's tried to be a good steward of an old home knows that there's endless projects that sometimes can lead to some frustration. But then you take a time out, you get some of the rage out, and then you relax, have some quesadillas, and then you move on with your life. All right, so let's move forward here. So keep all these themes in mind. All right, the themes of revisiting something, but potentially to let it go, of trying to remediate a problem that had been maybe bothering us for some time, and also understanding that some of these problems are not necessarily always our fault. There's sometimes where we have to have humility in the face of nature. It's not our fault that it's snowing a million times every other day, right? Like, here's an example. We've been doing a lot of snow removal, and it's not our fault that it's snowing. And we did one snow removal one night, and because it looked like it was done, and then it snowed again, and it's not our fault. We have to go out there and do it again. We have to figure it out. And it's not something we did wrong. It's just that sometimes there are forces beyond our control, and that's going to be one of the lessons around this as well. Okay, so that is the Mercury-Uranus square, the beginning of our squares between the planets and Uranus. Now, directly after this, and this is a pattern that I want you to understand, is that right after the square to Uranus, the planets are going to move into an ingress into Pisces and immediately conjoin the North Node. So how is Pisces 1 different from Aquarius 3? Okay, Aquarius 3 is the final visitation of something to take the leap into the unknown. Okay, it's a revisiting, in my opinion. Pisces 1 is more about, okay, we're wandering in the dark here. Okay, so here's Pisces 1, right? We're wandering off in the swamps of our inner journey. Okay, if we leave behind a situation, sometimes we can find ourselves confronting old narratives. And when Mercury moves into Pisces 1 and all of these other planets move into Pisces 1, we have a decan in 36 faces that's called the labyrinth. Okay, the labyrinth is a place where we can get lost, where we're searching for the center, or we're searching for a way out from the center. So one of the things that is discussed in this examination of the decans is this particular 10-degree section of Pisces shows us the repetitive narrative loops that we might be getting stuck with it. So when we go off and we leave our past behind, it's very easy sometimes to repeat the same patterns, to repeat the same mistakes, because our beliefs haven't really changed. When we try to change something externally without examining the internal belief system that led to that situation and manifestation, we might be doomed to repeat it. So in addition to untying the karmic knots physically, idealistically, we also have to examine our inner narratives, our inner beliefs that we hold dear. Because once we do so, then we can truly become liberated from those old things. I've been trying to do this in my relationship with money. I'm not going to belabor this book this week, but this is the book I've been reading, Sacred Economics, Money, Gift, and Society in the Age of Transition, the revised edition by Charles Eisenstein. In my own personal narrative, as an example, I've had a kind of a negative relationship with money, with capitalism. I've had a negative relationship with my gut feeling that just something wasn't right. Now, part of the reason that those belief systems became ingrained was I had experiences of I have a grandfather. I think I've told this story on the channel before, but for those of you who are new or haven't heard it, I had a grandfather that owned a company. He inherited a company from his immigrant father who immigrated from England and started a business in America, a corrugated cardboard box company in the Chicago area. And my grandfather inherited that and kind of ran it into the ground, kind of, did all the cliched, abuses of capitalism, like letting family members use expense accounts, like mismanaging it so spectacularly that by the end of it, he was kind of trying to save his own ass by doing some really horrific things, like trying to cut people below minimum wage, cutting people's health insurance. I remember part of my family getting really angry because my grandfather was debating whether to try to cut the health insurance of a pregnant woman that worked for him. And I was a young teenager during this period of time, and witnessing these types of ways that people were treating each other, it was horrible. And it destroyed our family because my mom went to go work for my grandpa and to try to fix things and help. And she saw a lot of these abuses happening and spoke up about it. And it was a lot of conflict, and they didn't talk to each other after that. So in my experiences, a lot of the vision of people doing business or people abusing their wealth led to heartache and pain. And that's been something that's been carried with me as a belief throughout my adulthood, is that, you know what, if you're doing business, if you're doing commerce, you're probably a bad person, which that alone is not true, right? But what is true is that the system that we are a part of, it incentivizes us competing with one another and potentially mistreating one another. It can be very cutthroat. So part of what I'm doing, like with Mercury moving into Pisces, all of these planets moving into Pisces, is examining my own belief system around money, about how to create community, how to become prosperous and abundant in ways that uplift others rather than create conflict and competition and things of that nature. Now, you may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. And I will offer this to those of you who are skeptical and have your own set of inherent belief systems. The experiences that we're seeing in the news today, all of the imperial boomerangs that are coming back to America through the oppression of our own citizens, through the rise of authoritarianism and fascism, through the demonization and scapegoating of vulnerable populations. All of that is actually a very natural result of a system that incentivizes us to isolate from one another and compete with one another. And it doesn't have to be that way. Like, we've always made these assumptions that this is the only way to organize a society and the only way to organize an economy. Well, before I make bold declarative statements, I'm doing research. I'm saying, what are the alternatives? What are the alternative narratives? What are the alternative stories? Because everything that we hold as a belief is a story. This is what I love about Charles Eisenstein. He says money itself is a story. It's a narrative. It's a set of relationships and agreements that we have. On the surface, a dollar bill is just a piece of paper. We give it meaning by the story that we give it. So how do we create a new story? How do we create a new story of what it means to exchange, of what we value? What do we value? How do we stop the turning of every collective common that we enjoy? Some things that are unquantifiable. How do we stop the conversion of that to numbers, to paper, right? How do we value those things? Those are the type, I'm using this as an example of something that you might resonate with in your own life, something that you made an assumption about, where I would hope that this will do is inspire you to ask whether we can write a new story. Ask if there's some sort of belief system that is inherent within you, maybe from a negative experience from your youth, that you can ask questions of. Now, this is Mercury in Pisces. It says, how do we question the assumptions that we bring with us into our adulthood? Now, this doesn't mean that we necessarily have to invalidate every belief system that we have, okay? This is not like, let's invalidate every single part of our history or whatever. In fact, this book that I'm reading does not invalidate every part of our history. He says in this book that part of this is our relationship to the earth as a child to a mother. And as a human society, maybe we are coming to a point where we need to mature, where we need to relate to our earth as a lover rather than as a mother. Because a mother gives unconditionally, and generally a child takes without necessarily giving anything consciously back. Of course, we as parents know that we receive from our children, as far as we receive love, we receive, I don't know, the ability to know that we have a sense of purpose and that we're helping the next generations, etc. But how do we examine different narratives around our beliefs, okay, that are treating this earth as an equal, as someone who we care about what happens to them, rather than feeling like we are just taking without giving anything back? How do we become in a reciprocal relationship where we care as much about healing the planet as we care about taking and being provided for? Think of how a mother or a parent gifts their energy, time, money, resources, part even of their body. Like if you're breastfeeding, it's a gift you're giving to that child without necessarily any thought of return, rather than just caring about their future. If we become in this relationship with the earth of becoming lover with the earth, we care about what happens to her, right? Instead of just taking. So this is an example of what we could examine as far as narratives that we make assumptions about. Now, here's what the other thing I will say about that. When you are trying to write a new story, you have to examine a lot of different opinions. You have to examine a lot of different historical things. You have to examine a lot of different factors. You don't have to just make up your mind that the old story was wrong and wholeheartedly discard it. You find the pieces where you might have been under a false assumption. You discard those. You try to incorporate new pieces into it. You know, I think that we're coming to the end of the story of the Earth age, right? If we think about this astrologically, there were Saturn and Jupiter conjunctions in Earth signs for the last 250, 300 years. That showed us that we were utilizing the elements of Earth to create massive amounts of physical growth. Okay, we've just started into the Saturn-Jupiter conjunctions in air signs. We had a little bit of a preview in what, 1981, 1983, somewhere around there, with the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction in Libra. But we really are having the Saturn and Jupiter conjunctions. We saw one in 2020 in Aquarius. This is really ushering in a different mindset, a whole different narrative of what it means to be human. And we have to communicate with one another and co-create that. So this is a long way of saying, and I think this is important to examine this as we see all these planets ingresses. To me, if I look at this holistically, the squares of the planets from Aquarius 3 to Uranus 3 shows us there's a problem. We're going to have to leave behind this particular thing, whether it's a story, whether it's a situation, etc. When the planets move into Pisces and then join the North Node, a point of increase, we might feel a little bit confused at first. We might be trying on different things, different personas, different belief systems. We might be experimenting. There's nothing wrong with that. That's okay. How do we write a new story collectively? Always examine the things that you hold as assumptions. Really, really important. And don't let someone else define your story for you too. Don't let the news define your story for you. Don't let a family member define your story for you. Uh, Communicate with as diverse amount of people as you can to just see what their journey is like. What are the things that they're going through? What are their experiences like? This is why I love watching stories of people who are living in different cultures, different parts of the world, because it helps me to see what is different in their experience, but also what the threads of commonality are as well. All right. We've got some nice comments coming in, so I'm just going to keep looking at this. Okay, we've got people that are giving each other good advice about window insulation, which is great. I love it. Okay, let's see. So Cosmic Rose says, can give away what we don't have. Yeah. Do you mean to say can't give away or can give away? I guess see, I moved back in with my mom and cared for her and my stepdad in the last 2 years during hospice. Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think that giving what we want to receive is important. I think that I'm really trying to come into alignment with being more generous, holding more loosely to the things around me. As someone who experienced a lot of change, Rose, as a young person, and a lot of uncertainty as an adult, sometimes that can make us feel very self-protective. And sometimes you have to untrain yourself to that. It's hard to trust life when there's a lot of things that change that you don't have control over. So how do we start to repair our trust with life and with each other and with fate? I think that's an important question that I'm asking with myself. And part of that is initiating generosity. Instead of waiting for good things to come to me, I have to give that first. I have to keep priming the pump for reciprocal relationships. And that's something a lot of us are struggling with. A lot of us are waiting for our ship to come in, and we have to go out and we have to create it. And sometimes you create abundance in your life through sharing what you have, even if it's meager, with others. Sometimes what we have is time. I know that we've been clearing snow with a snowblower, and I know my friend came down and did something with her plow, but we've been using our snowblower to blow the neighbors' sidewalks off. So this is just a little tiny, tiny act of kindness that can, when we've been doing that, we've been meeting our neighbors and talking to them. It's been really great. I've been loving the connection we've been making just through that initiated through just doing something for someone else without thought of return. Scott Scorpio Sun Tarot is here. What's up, Scott? How you doing, bud? Nice to see you in the chat. Thank you for joining us here today. Hope everything's going well your way. Devin says, such a harsh element switch. Yeah, from earth to air, right? You're talking about with the ages. Because we get so used to doing things. Like, for much of our life, we had this assumption that if we did things a certain way, if we followed a certain script, we might be able to get our little piece of the pie, right? And this is not true for everyone. A lot of this depends on privilege, and a lot of this is some of the propaganda that we were fed in our youth, especially as Americans. But yeah, it is a jarring shift. It is a jarring shift away from certainty into a little bit more chaos, a little bit more decentralization. One of the ideas in this book, I know this is going to be difficult for some people, but just questioning just the idea of property in general. And I think that this is something where it's worth exploring these ideas. It doesn't mean that we have to necessarily wholesale and shift all of these things overnight, but just thinking about how we got where we've gotten. And we can look at the history of colonization, and we can look at the history of especially how we've gone about expanding the American empire, or other empires over history, which is going to be super important moving forward as we see Saturn and Neptune moving into Aries, because those are a lot of the themes that we're experiencing. Cosmic Rose says can't, right? Yeah, and can't give what you don't have. Rose, I think that this is something that I've struggled with in the past too, friend. But again, give what you do have. and give with your whole heart. And you'd be amazed at the ways that primes the pump for abundance in your own life. You know, like I said, if what you have is time, give your time. If what you have is resources, give your resources. If what you have is knowledge, share your wisdom. If what you have is an artistic view of the world that reflects and mirrors it back to the world, share your art. You know, there's so many different ways to share and give a gift to somebody. Yeah, appreciate you, Scott. Earth signs are slower to change and more stable, Devin says. Absolutely. Yeah, things are changing very, very quickly as we've moved into the air age, for sure. Rose says, I wanted friends to go do outdoor nature photography with so I could create an online club. And I got 250 members, provided enough so I could plan and lead monthly weekend trips. That's great. You know, so what, you're already doing it. You're giving your time and your energy to create community. So that's a perfect example, right? Yeah, exactly what you meant. Not always money. Exactly. And that's the essence of this book I'm reading, is sometimes what we have to give is not just quantifiable, right? There's qualitative things to it. Sometimes what we have to give is not measurable by a number, but it's equally as valuable. All right, let's keep going. What do you say? So Mercury moving into Pisces, 6th, and we're going to bring the chart back up here, and we're looking at the next few days unfolding. So that's Friday, February the 6th. And now we're seeing February the 8th, we've got Venus making the square to Uranus. So a repetition of these themes, right? Again, I won't belabor this completely. Lord knows I'm a little bit guilty of being a belaborer. But I won't go through all of the Decans thing again, but I will say this. I want you to think about the themes we talked about with Aquarius 3 and Taurus 3. I want you to think about which houses those planets are responsible for. When Mercury is making the square, the Gemini and Virgo part of your chart is going to be getting a shakeup, a renew, something of that nature. When Venus makes the square to Uranus, it's Taurus and Libra. So look at those topics. Those topics are very different. In this arbitrary Libra rising chart, it's the first house, okay, and the 8th house. So the Venus-Uranus square for a Libra rising could be bringing in themes about shared resources and how that makes you feel as an individual. It could be related to your own body. It could be related to your own sense of identity and how you share resources with someone else. In this same arbitrary chart, that Mercury square with Uranus could be related to the 12th house and to the 9th house. So it could have been related about your belief systems, about long distance travel, could be about engaging in higher education. Maybe somebody comes to the realization that they don't want to be in, I don't know, they don't want to be in school anymore or something like that. Or maybe they are coming to the realization that they are tired of traveling. They're like, I don't want to go back to this place that I normally go to. It's a long distance travel, right? And then it goes on to the next part of the narrative. If you see your life as a story and you think of yourself as, you know, co-creating as an author, I think there's a lot of flexibility within that of being able to write a new script. Devin says this square is different because of the rulership and dignity. Right, exactly. So we have, let's see, because of Saturn's dignity or because of, okay. Yeah, a good point, right? We've got the Mercury being hosted by Saturn. And let's see here. Well, not in this chart. Can you say more about that, Devin? I want to make sure that if I'm commenting on it, that I'm understanding exactly what you're referring to. The other thing that we are moving forward into is the sun moving into Aquarius 3. So as we move forward into February the 8th, while Venus is making the square to Uranus, okay, we're going to be starting to see the sun moving into that decan that we've been highlighting here. Devin says, Venus ruling Taurus in that line of sight and having dignity in the decan by triplicity. Okay, so triplicity, dignity, often associated with support of our communities, right? Being able to have the people coming together to support us on that level. A good catch. All right, let's keep going. So we've talked about Aquarius 3. Now the sun's going to be moving into this decan from the 8th to the 18th. And we are going to be starting to see some of our eclipse energy starting to formulate. Before I dive into Aquarius 3, friends, do me a huge favor. If you could do me the honor of liking this video, subscribing to the channel. Let's take a little stretch break for a minute, okay? Move our bodies a little bit, get some blood flowing to my legs and hips and yours as well, so that we can keep the brain functioning. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Been a little, I didn't think I'm under the weather, but I'm pretty tired, if I'm going to be honest. Going out and doing snow removal and taking a walk in really cold temperatures, your body's just kind of like, okay, let's try to figure this out. Although I will say, Tanya and I have been kind of trading off. I cleared the snow on, what was it, Thursday? She did it yesterday, so I'm grateful for her assistance with that. I'm not going to claim credit for just doing the snow myself. But it takes a couple days, I think, after you do some intense physical activity to be on the right side of it again. All right, back to Aquarius 3. So the 8th through the 18th. I think we've gone through the significations of this. I will just also reiterate, this decan often leads us to frustration. It says, you know what? This situation isn't tenable anymore. Sometimes people I've met who traverse this decan with different planets or different angles, they will sit in that frustrated situation far longer than is necessary. What I've counseled a lot of people that have planets in this 10-degree section of Aquarius is sometimes it's okay to take the leap. There's no shame in letting go of something. I've used the story of Simone Biles from the Summer Olympics a few years ago, where she was having a really difficult experience with the twisties, right? An unstable effort. There was something going on with her nervous system, and she wasn't able to feel safe landing these very athletic moves in the air. And it was very dangerous for her to compete under those circumstances. And she didn't have anything to prove. She had already won all the gold medals beforehand, and she kind of sat it out. She knew that it wasn't safe for her to compete, and I think she had Jupiter in this decan, and she created honor and merit by not participating, by saying, I'm done. I don't need to prove anything here. And this is very different than the Leo 3 decan, where you see someone in the Seven of Wands defending a position and saying, I'm going to defend my position, authority, integrity with everything I've got. So this is a good decan to understand. You got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. And we're coming to a turning point where we need to leave some of the old habits that we had behind. We need to start to leave things like planned obsolescence. We need to start to leave behind the narrative that we have to rape and pillage the earth to create abundance. We need to start leaving behind the narrative that more for me is less for you. that I need to hoard resources to be successful. These are all narratives that just aren't sustainable moving forward, and that they're going to be greater and greater atrocities perpetrated on each other to keep these old stories alive. And we get to decide as a community to let them go and write a new chapter in the book, right? Every day, Elvis Costello says, every day I write the book. So that being said, let's kind of break it down. Scampostrini says, imagine having all these planets in your 11th house, squaring your stellium in Scorpio 8th house. It feel intense. Whew. Well, I feel you on that. I'm going to have all these planets in my 7th house squaring my moon in the 10th house. So I feel you. I feel you. Intensity for sure. Okay. So we're going to start off with a last quarter moon with the sun in this decan. Okay. So we bring that to the stage and we take a look at it. And on February 9th, we have the moon in Scorpio. Okay. Just like Scampostrini was talking about here, we have a Scorpio planet, the moon in its fall, squaring the sun in its exile. This is always an interesting kind of quarter moon because both of the lights are debilitated. And this is also like I've seen other natal charts with this, like prominent example of this combination came to us from the person who I chose for the song of the week, Phil Collins. Phil Collins has this combination. And the song of the week was his song from Genesis, Land of Confusion. It seemed apropos. It seemed like a lot of the saber rattling of people in power just creating this confusing state and not much love to go around, you know. This is a land of confusion. So with this last quarter moon, you know, we just went through the full moon in Leo, and we were trying to figure out what our role was in the transition between one narrative and another. And with the last quarter moon in Scorpio 3 shows us the Seven of Cups, or these kind of illusionary things. Scorpio 3 is a decan where we're glamorizing a form that is no longer vital, right? Where it's not bringing us any joy, it's not bringing us any vitality, sustenance, etc. And oftentimes you will see people doing more and more debauchery, which is what this decan is called, to keep that old form alive. When the moon is waning in this decan, I think this is an opportunity to release some of our illusions, to say, you know what, the time has come for this to let it go. This is the reality check. And when we start to let go of an old form that doesn't serve us, then we can untie those karmic knots and completely move into the fresh start. And I think it's going to be important to do so, because the new moon solar eclipse in Aquarius 3 is it's go for it o'clock. You know, there's no going back, right? Life might look very different after that series of eclipses. Rose says, will Leo be the release point? The full moon in Leo? I mean, potentially. I think the full moon in Leo is going to be saying, hey, who are you in this role? I like to think of the first quarter moons as we're trying to increase the quality of the decan that the moon is in. And with the last quarter moons or the balsamic moon phases, the waning light, we have to kind of lessen the quality of that decan to move forward. So I think the release point is actually Scorpio, right? But I think what you're seeing here is you're seeing the opposition between Uranus, right, and this T-square. Does that mean we have to embrace Leo stuff there? I don't know. I think if it were me, I would say, how do we just release our illusions? How do we get real with our situations and figure out that, you know, there's no going back. We have to write a new story. All right. Now, on the 10th, Venus is moving into Pisces. So Venus joins Mercury. Now, this is much better news, in my opinion, than Mercury moving into Pisces. Not that people who have Mercury in Pisces don't have their virtues. They can be extremely artistic in their communications. They can be great poets. They can be excellent with figurative language. Maya Angelou is an example of a Mercury in Pisces native who weaved beautiful, beautiful tapestries with her words. But Venus is much more at home in Pisces. This is a planet that is exalted in Pisces. This is, the mark of great, great artistic endeavors. My favorite Venus in Pisces native story is John Williams, who is the soundtrack composer. Just incredible, epic, really epic sounds. So I think that Venus in Pisces just has an epicness to it. It also has a challenge around setting healthy boundaries. Sometimes when we are trying to dissolve all the boundaries within Pisces, that can lead to getting hurt sometimes because of our idealism. If you think about Pisces in the Northern Hemisphere as the time of year when the snow starts to melt, when the ice starts to melt, right? When all of the solidified things turn into this great primordial ocean or soup. Like in our community, like when the ice melts, it mixes with dirt and becomes mud. And that mud is what gives us new life, okay? So this might be a time where we're starting to dissolve the boundaries between one another, where we're starting to see the beauty in the collective. We're starting to embrace compassion. Like it's a great time to do art. And sometimes the most difficult periods in history have made some of the most incredible art. So this is a great way to provide that catharsis that we might need. Yes, the crocuses are blooming, absolutely. So this could be an upgrade for your Libra and Taurus areas of your chart as well, the topics associated with that, because Venus is moving into a condition that is much more supported. Now, this is going to be moving into that conjunction with the North Node. So we might have a lot of desire energy towards changing and shifting our stories. Now, as we move forward on the 11th, we have two things happening on the 11th. All right, so here's Mercury at about 8 degrees of Pisces, and it is going to emerge as the morning star at about 7 degrees, and then move into its retrograde shadow at 8 degrees. Okay, so this is an important moment of phasis, right? An important communication from Mercury. You could see that it is separated from the sun by about 15 degrees, becoming visible in the sky. It's always important to pay attention to when planets make phasis moments. A phasis moment is an omen that is speaking. So sometimes the planets speak a little bit louder and are more focal points. When planets emerge from the beams of the sun, they become a little bit more concentrated in their energy. So pay attention to messages you receive on February 11th. They could be in service of re-examining your cherished belief systems. You could be feeling a little bit unmoored, right? With lost in the labyrinth. How do we find our threads of Ariadne during this point in time? If you're not familiar with the story of Theseus, is it Theseus? Theseus and the Minotaur? I think it's Theseus. He got lost in the maze. He went in to slay the Minotaur, and to stop the. It's kind of a poignant story. Basically, the Minotaur people were kidnapping people and sending sacrifices to the Minotaur, and Theseus was a king or a prince that was like, I will go and stop this. I need to go and figure this out and slay the Minotaur. And he gets lost in the labyrinth, but he has this string that a princess of that land gave him so that he could find his way back out again. So when we're going through these challenges, when we're going through these inner journeys, I think this is really important for Pisces first decade in particular, these inner narratives. We need to have a lifeline. Think about this also if let's use a modern example, the Upside Down, right? Stranger Things. And spoiler alert, if you haven't watched all of it, But when Max is in the upside down, and the way that she's able to have that lifeline, that thread of Ariadne, it was through music, right? It was through Kate Bush. It was through 2 avocados for $10. Which I always think of that. What is this song? What is this song? Oh, Running Up the Hill. 2 avocados for $10 is like a joke that is like an inside joke between my partner and I, because there's a little meme going around with like a little mouse that was like, if I only could, I'd make a deal with God, make 2 avocados for $10. Like, that wouldn't be such a good deal. Like, so just look it up. It's funny. But that's what comes up in my mind. But I digress. The interesting thing about that is we need to have things that ground us. When we're going through these internal journeys, we need to have a lifeline that can pull us out again. We don't want to get lost in the upside down. We don't want to get lost in the internal narratives. We don't want to get lost in escapism. This is the thing that I think is a danger of, especially the first parts of Pisces, is just wanting to escape from reality. When our reality becomes so harsh and really so violent and challenging, it's really easy to want to say, I don't want to get involved. I don't want to be a part of this. I want to go escape off into a land of fantasy, sometimes through substance abuse or things like that. Or it could be through media, like through movies and things like that. How do we stay present? How do we go through some of those journeys and kind of try to return home? I think that the other signification that comes up with Pisces for me in this decan also, Odysseus, right? Trying to return home from a great battle, from great trauma, but getting sidetracked, getting like lost along the way, but still pursuing that siren song that is calling you back home. So how do you stay grounded when you're going through these challenges? So Mercury going through its retrograde shadow, Mercury conjoining the North Node, this is a point where you're going to get some messages about how to rewrite your internal narrative. But you might have to revisit some things to do so, okay? From this point on, like from the 11th on until Mercury retrogrades, all of the things that happen around this period of time, since it's in its shadow period, might be up for revisitation. So just be very careful around this period of time also. The real danger between the Mercury 8 degrees and 22 degrees, okay, when Mercury retrogrades, so between the 11th and the 26th of February, if we're going to be practical about it, check all your details. Give yourself Ariadne's lifeline, okay? Don't just blend it all together, because if you do a shoddy job of it, if you don't pay attention to your details and double check things, when Mercury stations retrograde in Pisces, you're going to have to be redoing all of these things. So this is, I think, one of the things that we can do to prepare is start to be able to, make sure that we are crossing our T's and dotting our I's and getting all of the information and not making assumptions, not blending it all together. All right. Okay. So let's keep going. Mercury is going to conjoin the North Node on the 12th. And here you can see it around 9 degrees. Mercury in the North Node, I mean, to me, there's two ways of looking at that North Node. From a Hellenistic perspective, it is a point of increase. From a Vedic perspective, it is a point of desire. So if we're increasing our desire, we may be increasing our desire to escape from our reality. So it makes it even more, to me, it makes it a little bit more dangerous. Is we have to be very, very careful about, not putting ourselves in positions where we escape so violently. Or I guess Pisces, it's really, maybe it's not a violent escape, but we escape so deeply that when we return to reality, then reality becomes violent, okay? this is one of the things I've learned about escapism is eventually the check comes due, you know. If you're avoiding something in your life, if you are going off into your imagination, if you are going off into any type of substance thing, eventually when you come back down to earth, uh, sometimes reality is harsher because you haven't been taking care of the little things that need to be taken care of on the day-to-day basis. So how do we stay grounded? How do we, during this Mercury North Node, Venus North Node, how do we keep one foot on the ground while we're still allowing ourselves to dream a little bit? I think that this is one of the beautiful things about Pisces is we can be dreamers. And I think that we need a dream. We need to have a connection to the unmanifested. My partner Tanya and I, aka Freshtopia in the chat today, we've been talking a lot about time. And she's a huge fan of like time travel, you know, theory and things of that nature. And we've been talking about like the experience of experiencing time. Like our bodies experience time. Oh man, I'm going to butcher this, but we are sort of already experienced something. There's a delay, right? Our brains have a sort of a delay from our consciousness to what we're going on. So like I'm showing you this rock right here in the video, but I actually showed it to you like 3 seconds ago, or like a fraction of a second ago in the past. But your brain didn't register it until a little bit later. And there's all sorts of theories about this, about, you know, time not necessarily being as linear as we think, and that we're actually experiencing all time, everything all at once, all the time. But we wouldn't be able to process all that information. So our brains are kind of helping us to experience it linearly. But she was talking about a study that said people who studied after a test actually did better on the test, like which kind of sounds counterintuitive. It's a real mind twister, isn't it? So what I will say is stay as grounded as you can, dream a little bit, understand that sometimes time isn't linear. If you want to go off into the flow state, this is a great time to do so. These Pisces, Venus, North Node conjunctions. I will say though that have a check-in, you know. I used to go off into this flow state a lot when I was doing music, right? I probably do it when I'm doing these live streams because my awareness of time is not, yes, I see the numbers clicking away there, but sometimes I just get like lost in the sauce. But there would be times when I would wake up from practicing my guitar and it'd be 4 hours later, or I'd forgotten to eat, or I didn't go to sleep on time because I was lost in the magic of creation. And I think it's okay to do that sometimes, but I think that there's also times where that can really be detrimental to your responsibilities too. And that's the balance point. How do you find a balance point between your creative muse and being in that flow state, but also taking care of the kind of the Virgoian details of your life? Not always an easy question to answer, right? Yeah, NLHM4MS says past, present, future at the same time. Absolutely. You're right. Exactly. Cosmic Rose says spider, animal, totem, create, create, create so that you don't get caught in the web of fate. I like that. It even rhymes. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay. Let me see here. I'm just reading through the chat. Lots of great comments, friends. I'm trying to streamline it a little bit today, mostly because I'm going to run out of steam if I don't. And we've got some important stuff to talk about. The next big thing we have to talk about is probably the biggest thing, in addition to the conjunction with Neptune, but Saturn moving into Aries. So this is the 13th, and you can see here, Saturn moving into Aries. This is how I feel when I have to face the prospect of talking about Saturn moving into Aries. Like, are we going to do this? Okay, let's do it. All right, let me get well hydrated for this one. Here we go. Crack my knuckles. let's talk Saturn in Aries. So Saturn in Aries is a place that is challenging for Saturn. And I'm going to bring up the decan associated with Aries 1. Now, just in the whole, overall, Saturn is in its fall. Saturn is in the house of Mars. It's in a malefic house. It is hosted by a malefic planet. The lessons of responsibility, the lessons of feeling bound to something can be a little bit harsher when Saturn's moving through a malefic home, right? Or hosted by a malefic planet. As I'm recording this right now, Saturn's moving through Jupiter's realm of Pisces. It's as horrible as things are right now. Technically, Saturn should have softened a little bit when it moved out of Aries back into Pisces when it did its retrograde. Now, your mileage with that may vary. But when we have Saturn moving into Aries, this is a binding to a decan. I say binding because Saturn is a planet that goes through it binds us to things. It says you have to do this. There's no choice in this, right? And what does Aries 1 ask us for? Well, it asks us to sever from the collective. Asks us to individuate as an individual point of consciousness. In the language of colonization, it asks us to conquer new territory. Although I'm kind of tired of thinking about it in those terms. That's a story that I don't want to perpetuate. But I will say this. Just because me as an individual doesn't want to perpetuate that narrative doesn't mean that we won't see examples of that narrative play out in the collective through people's ananke, through their ignorance. So unfortunately, I do think that there are some themes associated with colonization, with annexation of property, of expanding empires. The dates that we experience with this, we have Saturn moving through Aries 1 from the 13th of February to May the 8th. It will be in Aries 2 from May 8th to October 21st. It stations retrograde at that point. It stations retrograde, in the middle of that cycle. It is retrograde on the 26th of July at 14 degrees of Aries. It stations direct at 7 degrees of Aries on December the 10th. I want you to keep in mind that degree, 7 degrees Aries, because there's going to be a huge stack up with Mars and Saturn and Mercury on the 19th of April. The exact degree that that Saturn is going to station direct in December. So something is going to happen important on the 19th of April that will have echoes and reverberations off into December, mid-December. So Aries 1, let's talk about Aries 1. Let's see. Aries 1, the Lord of Dominion. Asankava calls it the axe. There's a spirit in this decan called Adonis, which is a name for Pluto or Hades. We have a figure in the Two of Wands in the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot of someone holding a globe and holding a wand and looking out in what people have called trying to figure out what new territory they want to conquer. Some people have called this Alexander the Great. There is this energy of looking out and seeing how do we expand? How do we sever something to expand, to grow, etc.? Aries, of course, is the cardinal fire sign of spring in the Northern Hemisphere. It is very yang. It has a lot of yang energy where it is sort of indifferent to collateral damage. It's saying, I've got to force my way through this. And it doesn't matter who I hurt to do so. Think about it. If you think about it just from nature, it's the seed forcing its way through the soil. It is the ovum splitting cells, right, to start to proliferate into a new life form. It is also associated with tyrants, authoritarian kind of challenges. I think the main thing that I'm thinking about with this, though, is this is a martial decan. It is a Mars-ruled decan and a Mars-ruled sign. It's one of the most martial of decans. The main energy with this decan is, you're cutting the umbilical cord, right? And you are rejecting what you are not. Like, we are severing from the mother in this decan and saying, I am my own individual person, my own individual self. Okay. So before we define who we are and what we want to be, which is the second 10-degree section of Aries, we have to say, I am not this. And we talked about this at the very beginning of the broadcast. Saturn is going to force us or bind us to say, this is not me. Like, I reject this. Okay. And we might have to do that. We might have to start rejecting, some of the things we're seeing in the collective. Well, we obviously have to reject some of the things we're seeing in the collective. Some people are rejecting their own things, their own narratives. Some people are saying that that they want to reject diversity, that they want to reject people living in this country, that they don't feel belong here. But the more compassionate of us say, well, we reject oppression. We reject this authoritarianism. We reject the abuse of our neighbors. Those are things that are going to become even more important moving forward. And we may not have a choice. Right now, as I'm recording this, we're seeing a lot of these types of events playing out in various city centers, in Minneapolis, Portland, other places. But that doesn't mean that these things won't come to your communities, right? This is the kind of thing that we're facing the specter of. It's not as intense everywhere right now, but it could be. And I think that we are all going to have to figure out how to reckon with some of these challenges moving forward. Now, not only is Saturn moving into Aries, okay? Austin Coppock calls this decan with Saturn and Aries a terrifying vision of authority, right? He literally says this in his book, a terrifying vision of authority. But the conjunction with Neptune is significant. So let's take a look at this. So this is happening on the 20th. And I'm going to be skipping back and forth a little bit non-linearly, I think, because we can't really talk about Saturn and Aries without the conjunction with Neptune. So with the conjunction with Neptune, this is a very contradictory type of energy. Saturn is associated with beginnings and endings, with concretizing something, castrating multiplicity of possibilities into one specific reality, making something real, a reality check. Neptune is not those things. Neptune is the dissolving of boundaries, whereas Saturn can be the constructing of them. Saturn can be the sober reality check. Neptune can be the illusion that comes to us through anesthetic, right? And being, I can never pronounce this word, anesthetized. Like, that's not the right way to say it, but through being drugged up, and not seeing things as they truly are. And this is made for some really interesting moments in history. The last Saturn-Neptune conjunction that we had was in 1989, November 1989, okay? And some pretty important things happened there. This was in Capricorn, 10 degrees Capricorn, and the Berlin Wall fell, okay? Like, this was something dissolving that created something new, right? So we had this boundary, this edifice that was separating people from one another that fell, and that created a completely new country, a new experience. So this dissolving and creation and concretizing energy is really fascinating to me. Now, the last conjunction of Saturn and Neptune in Aries, in the first decan of Aries, I believe, was in 555 CE. I had to go way back for this one. And well, let me backtrack. The last Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries, just in Aries, not in this decan, was in 1703, which talked about the founding of St. Petersburg, which was the capital of Russia. So the beginning of a new empire, right? Back in 555, this was the height of the Byzantine Empire, right? Where we had this huge expansion of territory across southern Europe, the Mediterranean, and northern Africa, like this conquering spirit. So if we look back in history, because history rhymes, it doesn't repeat, it rhymes, there could be something like this potentially coming back towards us. I know that the people in power in America have already been making a lot of overtures around acquiring Greenland, making threats about acquiring other places. It's colonialism. It's manifest destiny. Ignoring that part of the symbolism and the history around it would be foolhardy, because we've already seen this impulse kind of returning to the collective. So these themes are probably going to be, shaping up a little bit too. It could also be the dissolving of an organization like NATO. NATO was an organization where nations were cooperating with one another to protect each other. Well, when Saturn moves into Aries, there could be this attachment or delusion of, well, might makes right, and we're better off as an individual without supporting each other. And this is something I talked about with Melissa LaFara on we talked about Saturn and Neptune conjunction on her Energetic Principles podcast. I think that that's the real danger of this, of thinking that we have to go our own way alone. It doesn't mean we don't make a new start, but I think that the Neptune part of it says, you're better off being alone. I really don't feel that way. Whether I have in the past, I don't feel that way anymore. I think that as I'm learning how to open myself up and trust myself and my community and others, it just shows me that we're so interconnected. And I think that one of the things that we'll have to work through with this Saturn-Neptune conjunction, with Saturn moving through Aries, with Neptune and Aries, is this false illusion that we have to do it ourselves, that we have to isolate to be safe, or that we're split into all these different factions. It makes me real nervous, because humanity has had great success as a communal organism. As much as the powers that be try to isolate people, humanity's greatest successes actually come through cooperation. So this is something I hope that we can work through as a group and as a community as we move forward, because there's going to be a lot of noise around yang, machismo, masculinity, toxic masculinity, I guess you could say, on some level. And how do we be a balancing force for that? How do we, recognize that might not be the way to go? That being said, what are some ways that we can utilize these energies positively? Well, there might be something in our life where we have to make a new start. We have to create a new society that is based on care and compassion. Maybe we have to have new systems of economics that aren't as exploitive of each other and of the earth. That also can be a way to reject the status quo, right? So the energy of newness is important. The energy of structures crumbling and new forms emerging are important. And it's not set in stone that it has to be the formation of a fascist authoritarian state. That to me is not written in this story yet, right? It could be that we're dissolving that, and creating something new that is much more egalitarian. We'll see. I think that we still have a choice. I think we're still in a moment of history where we have a choice in that. But that door is rapidly closing if we don't step up and do something. Let's see. NLHMS M4MS says, do we reject our man-made laws? That's a good question. In some situations, maybe, right? It depends on who's making the laws, right? It depends on if those laws are just or not. There's all sorts of ways that people can make laws that are unjust that we should reject. I think living in the spirit of law is important. I guess I'm not really an anarchist, although I have some friends that are. Like, they're cool. They're really smart people. But I think that there has to be some organization to society. But I'm open-minded as far as what that means. And I also think that if someone is making a law that is oppressing somebody, then that's not a just law. And yeah, we might have to reject that. So we'll see, right? Let's see. Cosmic Rose says the world is on our side after Davos. I hope so. Not DJT after Davos. Well, I hope that the world understands that we are not our leader, right? That there's a lot of people in this country that don't support that leadership and that don't want these things to happen. So I hope that people listening around the world understand that, is that there are a lot of people in our country that are we're just really afraid right now. And I think that we're angry, afraid. I think that we don't want this to happen. We didn't choose this. There's so many people here that didn't vote for this, and we're just kind of watching in horror as our neighbors are being abused, and it's awful. It's awful. And our moment will probably come as far as being part of the balancing force to that. Devin says, I see this conjunction as the individual getting caught up in groupthink. I could see that. Yep. Let's see. Also, the idealism that gets brought from Pisces catches fire in Aries. That's a good way of thinking about it too. Yes, I appreciate you. Gavin was great at Davos, Rose says. Okay. Davos is where all the like powerful people get together and, stroke each other off. Is that what we have there? I don't know. I haven't paid too much attention to that particular event. So I will plead ignorance with that. Yes, let's go back to this idea of idealism that Devin brought up. Individual getting caught up in groupthink. This is something that Liz Green talks a lot about in her book about Neptune, is that this is sort of a collective, it dissolves the energy between us to like create a mass movement of some sort. It can be a collective delusion, right? And yeah, if you get caught up in it, it can be pretty challenging, right? You could see people, you've got some charismatic leaders around the world. Charismatic doesn't mean that they're good people. The leaders of the Nazi movement were charismatic. It just means that there was people that can incite emotions in people. And sometimes they do that just through fear, right? But this idealism that we're experiencing right now, trying to visualize a new society, maybe it does. Maybe there is actions that get taken on it. So I'm choosing to think that this doesn't necessarily have to be, I know that like there's part of me that's like, oh, Saturn and Aries, Saturn, Neptune, like there's such a wide spectrum of how this could play out. It could be an increase in violence in yang energy, people trying to institute things like martial law, etc. But it could also be like Devin is saying, people taking action on a much more egalitarian vision, but actually taking action on it. Do you see what I mean? Aries is an action-orientated sign. It says there's no more debate. It's just time to do it. It's just time to get involved, to do it. As someone who moves kind of slow and thinks things through, this energy is a little bit concerning to me because I tend to take my time with things and I get nervous when people are moving too quickly. But that's just me as an individual. We need people who take initiative. We need people that say, stop fucking thinking about it, Spencer. Just go out and do it, right? We need that in the world. So I think that this is also part of what we are looking at as well. Devin says Saturn in Aries is also Tony Hawk. Okay, right? So being able to be a pioneer, right? A pioneer and kind of go off into trying something that no one's tried before, like doing something athletic. I mean, other athletes, Jordan Love, the Packers quarterback, has Saturn in Aries, and he's a risk taker. He's had to learn how to mitigate the risks that he's taken in his life. There was a time when he was taking too many risks, and it led to some failures. And as he's grown and matured, he's learned to take a calculated risk. So this might be something to think about with Saturn. I like that word for that, those two words for Saturn and Aries, calculated risk, right? I think that works really well. Astro Move Play is here, says Tony. Yeah, for us Gen Xer, Xennials, Tony Hawk looms large in our consciousness from our childhood. Okay, so let's go back and talk about the time between the conjunction and the Saturn moving into Aries. Let's see. So if I go back a little bit, there's a few things that happen before that conjunction that we should be aware of. Some pretty important things, actually. But I did want to talk about the Saturn-Neptune conjunction because, you know, we're going to be feeling that pretty significantly right as Saturn moves into Aries. It's going to be applying within a degree. So right after Saturn moves into Aries, the Sun squares Uranus. Isn't that fun? So again, another one of our beautiful Uranus Sun squares, planetary squares. So that's happening on the 16th. A shock, right? A shock, especially maybe with leadership. We do have some traditional associations with the Sun and figureheads. So there might be something that happens with figurehead that's shocking potentially. I'm going to offer too, like a different story we can create with this. Remember we talked about the Sun being a source of generosity, a source of vitality. Maybe we, in our own lives, we could be shockingly generous. Maybe we could be unexpectedly vital, right? or where we're trying to help someone in ways that they never expected and sharing the gifts that we have. That could be another way to think about it. This is all leading up really to the new moon solar eclipse. So let's take a look at this solar eclipse here, and we'll break that down for you because this is a big one. This is a biggie. So here's the new moon solar eclipse in Aquarius 3, 28 degrees of Aquarius on the 17th. You can see here that both the sun and the moon, pretty tight but separating square from Uranus. Mars is co-present. Pluto is still hanging out. You've got Venus conjoining with the North Node that same day. Okay. And what's really, I think, most fascinating about this is this eclipse is hosted by Saturn, which is applying to Neptune in Aries. So if we look at all the different themes and we try to create a narrative from it, we have Aquarius 3, the frustration that people are feeling with revisiting an old narrative, not a permanent one, revisiting something old that is not necessarily going to stay, but is going to be, I don't know, mined for wisdom and then discarded again. This is an initiation of leaving the past behind, of a leap into the unknown. And Saturn in Aries with Neptune says, you don't really have a choice. You know, if you were like thinking that you were going to be able to resurrect something that you were revisiting, that's gone. That's dead. No more. You're going to have to take the leap. You're going to have to take a risk, calculated risk, but nonetheless, a risk nonetheless. This Venus conjoining the North Node in this eclipse gives me a little bit of hope that this is maybe the launching of a collective movement of saying, well, we're done with this exploitative way of treating each other. We're done with this kind of, I don't know, late stage capitalism that turns into fascism. You know, I hope that that's what it is speaking towards. It's part of that is through my own subjective lens, but can't keep going on like this. And with Venus conjoining the North Node, maybe it's an increase in our ability to love one another. Maybe it's an increase in our compassion. Maybe it's an increase in our ability to see that what happens to our neighbors actually happens to us, like that we are one, that we aren't these separated individuals, that we are a collective, that yes, we can have our own individual roles and ideas, etc., but really we're so much more connected than we originally think, that the age of rationalization, that Cartesian logic has told us that we're just these flesh suits, you know, as a vehicle for a soul, that I don't know, that whole separation is just really bothering me lately. I think that this world is ensouled. You know, we're not necessarily living for the afterlife. We're trying to do the best that we can with this time that we have now. And what is time even? Like, we can go down these philosophical rabbit holes about what is time and what is life and what is death. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me no more. That's what Venus and conjoining the North Node is saying, right? But anyway, jokes aside, it's an eclipse. It is starting our Bardo period between eclipses. We will have another eclipse that is happening on March the 3rd, if I am not mistaken. That's going to be at 12 degrees of Virgo. Okay, so that's a full moon lunar eclipse, early March, first couple days of March. And I'm just looking at my notes. Let me see, what's our date here? Squared Uranus. So pretty shocking event, potentially. I'm really curious to see what comes of that. And I'm hopeful, though, because the first aspect that we have is a trine. Actually, let's look at that. Let's pull up the recent, there we go. And then what we're going to do is we're going to show you the first aspect that's coming out of that. So the first aspect, I believe, is happening on Wednesday, the 18th. Oops. Oh, come on. So here's Wednesday, the 18th, and you can see the moon is making a trine to Jupiter. Now this actually bodes, I think, positively for the eclipse, right? When the moon makes an aspect to a benefic planet, Venus or Jupiter, and it is in a benefic aspect like a trine, I think that this could bring something very positive, like the manifestation of a vision with the moon in the second 10-degree section of Pisces, an ability to create community with the trine to Jupiter in Cancer 2, the walled garden, like being able to birth some kind of movement behind the scenes, potentially, things of that nature moving forward. So hang in there with the eclipse energy. It is a North Node eclipse, so an increase eclipse. Sometimes when we have an eclipse that's conjoining the South Node, it's about letting go. This is the birth of something new, okay? The birth of something very, very interesting that could have ridiculous long-term ramifications. All right. Venus conjunct the North Node on the 17th. We talked about that. That's kind of happening simultaneously with the eclipse. Okay, Venus coming together with the North Node. Sun moves into Pisces on the 18th. So the 18th through the 28th, we have Sun in Pisces 1. All right, we've talked about Pisces 1 a little bit, so I won't go too far in depth in it, but a couple other details about Pisces 1. So Pisces 1, first of all, Jupiter ruled sign, right? Jupiter ruled sign, Saturn ruled decan. So we have this kind of feeling of, there's a little bit of, I think, depression sometimes that can come through Pisces 1. There's a little bit of disillusionment, like, which is sometimes a Saturnian energy. If you think about the thema mundi as being Cancer rising, Pisces is on the 9th house cusp. And those Caden houses, they're moving away from the angle. Now, the 9th house is moving away from public facing 10th house midheaven success. So oftentimes this decan to me is it's a leaving behind of something. Book T calls it the Lord of abandoned success. It's saying, this isn't really satisfying. We revisited something that we are frustrated with in Aquarius 3. And now we're saying, you know what? Even though there's some structure built up around this, I'm leaving it behind. It doesn't float my boat anymore. It's a search for meaning, right? The 9th house often is associated with belief systems, with Orthodox religion. When we have this first decan here, we may abandon positions that we had been in for a long period of time and go off and say, what really motivates me? What is the essence of who I am now? And that's very different than that Aquarius 3 energy where we're revisiting something that we're feeling a little frustrated with to be able to take this leap into the unknown that we see in Pisces 1. And we talked a little bit about the labyrinth, which is Austin Coppock's name for this decan. While we're searching for meaning, we could get a little bit confused. We could get a little bit lost. Odysseus wanders around, trying to find his way home. Now, there's a great quote that a lot of people use for this decan that I like too. It's all that wander are not lost. And that's a reference to the Lord of the Rings. I used to think it meant Gandalf, but I think what it truly means is Aragorn. Aragorn is, wandering around the Middle Earth for many, many years, trying to figure out how to return home as the king of Gondor. But he goes on these adventures and he's doing things with purpose. He's not necessarily lost. He's kind of helping the people of Middle Earth, sometimes in disguise, right? There was a story in the appendices about him helping one of the stewards of Gondor in disguise, and then kind of just going off into the wilderness again. Thrangal, as I think is his name. But I thought that was pretty fascinating. And just because we're going on an internal journey, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to get lost in the sauce, right? It could be that we have to go and figure out what our true purpose is and our true meaning is. And once we start to figure out what our animating purpose is, what that spark is, then we can start taking those actions when all of those planets start moving into Aries. So really the first thing that we see in this decan, the solar decan, is the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. Now, we just kind of spent some time with that. Again, think about the themes related to structure, but also dissolving of structure. Something being born, something like Devin was pointing out, mass movements, mass psychosis. I do think that there's a glamorization energy in Neptune as well. And what is glamorized when we have Aries? Yang, violence, toxic masculinity, but also initiating something new. So there might be a glamour around just making a new start. Doesn't necessarily have to mean toxic masculinity. There are people out there who utilize Aries energy for the greater good, not just for some narcissistic, selfish endeavor. So we get to make a choice with that. Every energy in the zodiac is important. None of it is evil, right? It all has its purpose. If we think about it as part of just the unfolding of a cycle of nature. And we need yang energy to initiate things. Sometimes if we get too passive, we can allow abuses to happen. So we might need people who are forcefully saying, no, this is not going to work for us anymore. No, we're not going to let this happen anymore. So that might be part of the energy that we see playing out as well. Thankfully, with that kind of energy, We also have a pretty nice aspect forming between the two benefics with Venus trining Jupiter retrograde. So this is happening from 15 degrees of Pisces to 15 degrees of Cancer. That is a really fortunate decan of Pisces. It is the Jupiter ruled decan. It's very Jupiterian. And we have this contact with Jupiter retrograde there. So the ability to create something beautiful from our imaginations and to be able to protect it from, from danger with Jupiter and Cancer too, which is called the walled garden. So try during this period of time, right after the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, I want you to try to visualize the world that you want to create, whether it is collective or personal, and protect that vision, nurture it, like make a vision board, do your rituals around it, journal about it, talk about it, but talk about it with people you trust. Sometimes we need to protect that gentle vision. Sometimes we need to protect the nascent spark of energy. And this is a good time, I think, to learn how to protect our dreams and maybe how to begin to manifest them, but also to keep them in a sacred space until they're able to run on their own, right? That brings us to the first quarter moon on the 24th. So here is the square between the Gemini moon and the Pisces sun. If we say that this follows that Venus-Jupiter trine, we might have a lot of different options that we're exploring for manifestation. We've got this whole new kind of reality that we're living in with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. And we probably have some options, right? The first decan of Gemini splits our attention in a lot of different directions. So we may be feeling more social. We might be thinking about exchanging ideas with other people. Maybe we're exchanging our vision for our dream. What kind of society do we want to create with one another? There could be communication around that. We could feel a little bit paralyzed, like the Eight of Swords that the first decan Gemini is related to, because we have so many different options. Sometimes when structures tend to crumble, the options about what comes next are vast. So when we see some of the inevitability of some of the structures that are going to probably dissolve, we have to explore what options we have moving forward. And that might take a little bit of time. We might have to have some patience, and we might have to listen to each other, listen to various visions of how to structure or restructure a new society. Devin says, every seed needs the Aries energy to break out of its seed husk, I'm going to assume. Yeah, you break through the soil, break through the husk that is containing it. I mean, it's just part of nature, right? I will say, though, Saturn has difficulty in this decan. I mean, again, oftentimes Saturn speaks to how we're organizing society. And if we're organizing society with like Libra Saturn, for example, we're trying to create a balanced and just society. When we're organizing society around Saturn and Aries, it might be more beneficial for an individual than it would be for the collective. So just something to be aware of. We don't want to whitewash Saturn and Aries. It can be a really difficult placement. Okay. On the 26th, right after the first quarter moon, Mercury is going to station retrograde at 22 degrees of Pisces. Okay. Let's go forward to that. There's Mercury retrograde, 22 degrees. And again, I'll give you some dates. So Mercury is going to station retrograde on the 26th. It is going to renew itself in the heart of the sun with its inferior conjunction at 16 degrees of Pisces on March the 7th. It is also going to station direct on the, before we get to the direct station, it's going to emerge as the morning star on the 15th of March at 9 degrees Pisces, and then station direct on March 20th at 8 degrees of Pisces. Okay, so when you're thinking of Mercury retrogrades, you don't just think about the retrograde period. You think about, some people's mileage may vary with this, but some traditional astrologers use shadow periods, some people don't. But you think about when it enters its shadow period. You think about the Cazimi, the renewal in the heart of the sun. Think about entering into the beams of the sun, emerging out from the beams of the sun, and then the direct station. All of those are very, very important points and part of the same story, right? That is the point to make, is these are all connected moments about the similar story. So Mercury in Pisces 3. Pisces 3 has relationships to the 10 of Cups card. It's a Mars-ruled decan. It's asking us, what sacrifices are we willing to make for our dreams and for our ideals? With Mercury stationing retrograde, you may be asking that question to yourself, because Mercury is a planet that destabilizes, it questions things. It says, what sacrifices are necessary to create this more just world, to stand up for our communities, to create a more egalitarian community that isn't based on oppression and more for me is less for you? What are we going to have to do to make those changes? What are you going to have to do in your own personal life to create the life that you want, the idealized life that you maybe saw a glimpse of with Venus trining Jupiter retrograde? So I think this is part of what to think about. Now, there's another part of this that we should utilize as an experiment. Some literature in Eastern astrology, Vedic astrology, Jyotisha, speaks about a fallen planet or an exalted planet, when it is retrograde, acts as its opposite. So this is an interesting thought exercise / experiment for saying, well, normally if we think about a retrograded like planet in terrible condition, that would really suck. But maybe this is a little like a twist where Mercury might be working better than it normally would due to this kind of quirk with a retrograde planet in its fall acting as its exaltation. Now, there are other factors to that. Other planets have to be doing certain things, and I'm not enough of an expert in that form of astrology to make a well-informed, I don't know, statement about it. But I'm keeping my eye on it. I know that the last time this happened in 2025, there was a lot of commerce that I was doing. There was a lot of exchanges. There was a lot of plans being made. And yes, some of the retrograde things still reared their head. But overall, there was actually quite a bit of progress made, I guess. So think about that there is a potential for that. If you have prepared adequately in the shadow period, from the 11th to the 26th, I think some of the painful parts of Mercury retrograde may be lessened. But that is there's always going to be things we forget. There's always going to be things that we never anticipate that we're just going to have to go back and revisit. And this is part of the retrograde of Mercury. Painted Turtles here. What's up, Lord? Nice to see you. Says, hope everyone is doing well. Hope you're doing well too, my friend. Okay. A couple more things before we wrap for the day. The sun conjoins the North Node around this 27th. So an increase in our awareness, sun energy, spotlight, of the old stories that we're working through, of the narratives that we're working through, that we're trying to change, of potentially awareness of the ways that we try to escape, of ways that we try to find meaning and essence, the ways that we leave behind things in search of a higher purpose. All of those things could be increasing. Also look towards the Leo area of your chart, and you might be experiencing an increase in that area as well. That same day, Mars squares Uranus. Now this one is sticky. Mars-Uranus squares are notorious for bringing about unexpected severings, separations, accidents, violence. I guess be extra careful on this day. Slow down, you know. I would also say, to my experience of this aspect in the past has been one where I just got so fed up with the situation. I was like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. And maybe with the awareness that we get from a sense of higher purpose and meaning from the sun conjoining the North Node in Pisces, we realize that other parts of our life just aren't going to, there's no going back, right? And with Mars Uranus, sometimes it can be helpful for helping us to make a break where we otherwise couldn't have, or we would have felt stuck, or would have maybe gone along with something in the past. So utilizing this energy consciously of saying, what am I so fed up with that I don't want to do it anymore, right? What has outlived its vitality in my life, and how do I take action to separate myself from it in a way that doesn't create collateral damage, right? So there are ways to go about conscious uncoupling, whether it's from a person or from a job or from a place or from a belief system. So this might be part of what we're experiencing here too. And Venus is going to be assisting with this, I think, conjoining Mercury retrograde, helping us to smooth out communications with this on the 28th. Okay, we've got Venus and Mercury coming together here. Just potentially showing us the beauty of what happens when we liberate ourselves. Separations make a lot of people nervous in Western civilization. Losing anything makes people nervous. But you'd be amazed at the relief that you feel when you get rid of a burden, when you separate yourself from something that's been a great weight in your life that has been not working for so long. It's just this sigh of relief. And I'm just feeling like the Venus conjoining Mercury might be this long sigh of relief after we've finally extricated ourselves from something that has been a real problem for a long time. So that is what we've got for February 2026. We made it. Sorry if it was a little bit laborious this time. I'm kind of dragging myself to the finish line here, friends. But a couple things in March, and then we'll do a hexagram and an I-Ching, or we'll do an I-Ching, hexagram, and an animal for you. Coming up in March, full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo, very beginning of the month. Mercury cazimi in Pisces. Venus will emerge from under the beams in Aries and conjoin Saturn, first degrees of Aries. Jupiter stations direct at 15 degrees Cancer on the 10th of March. Mercury stations direct at 8 degrees, right, of Pisces in March. Both Neptune and Saturn will have their sort of cazimi moments, I guess you could say. Saturn cazimi moments. There's some debate on whether outer planets have a cazimi moment because they're not technically visible. I kind of think that they are a renewal of a cycle in some sense. But both of those planets will renew in the heart of the sun in March. Mars will move into Pisces. Venus will travel through Aries and Taurus, its home sign of Taurus. And then the sun will move into its exaltation in Aries. And we will also be seeing a pretty big stack up and forming eventually in Aries in the months ahead as well. I believe there's this huge conjunction. What's the date of this? The 19th of April with like 7 planets in Aries. It's going to be wild. But we'll just see what happens, right? Okay, so that's March. So before we leave, let's do an I-Ching in an animal. Devin says, maybe this Mercury in fall is usually caught in its emotions, but while retrograde, we can compartmentalize and organize our feelings to help build understanding, Virgo style. I like that. Yeah, right? With the retrograde, maybe we're a little bit more rational than we would normally be. Maybe we can find ways to practically use those emotional realizations. I like that for sure. All right. Thank you, Rose. Appreciate you. Okay. So the I-Ching that I got for you for February is number 15, which translates to modesty or humility. No changing lines. So Humility, humbleness, moderation, temperance, maintaining a balanced attitude, fulfilling one's duties, carrying things to completion. Jack Balkin, in his beautiful book, The Laws of Change, says, according to the Book of Changes, modesty is one of the most important virtues. It is not innate, but rather is a product of long, continuous, and conscious self-development and self-cultivation. It differs from the Christian ideal of meekness in important respects. Modesty does not mean submissiveness or passivity. A modest person may be quite active in the world, working steadily and unobtrusively, making commitments and living up to them. The text says that a modest person carries things through to their conclusion. Why is this attitude modest? It is because modest people do not think that they are more important than the work that they perform or the commitments that they have made to others. Therefore, they are consistent and reliable. Modest people do not regard anything that they must do as beneath them. Therefore, their pride does not get in the way of their success. They put their work, their obligations, and their commitments before their egos. This is why they are able to prevail in the long run. Thus, modesty does not simply imply inaction. Rather, it means acting positively, cooperatively, and harmoniously. It means respecting other people and treating them as equals. By contrast, proud people think that they are better than everyone else or act as if they were. Often their pride hides a deeper insecurity. But truly modest people know who they are and therefore do not need to engage in pretension in order to impress others. Conversely, they do not think of others as beneath them. They treat other people with the inherent dignity that all people deserve. Thus, modesty means being tolerant and accepting rather than haughty or judgmental. I love that. It's great advice. It's great advice for life, right? But especially for February. Now, the animal that we got is the jaguar. What a beautiful creature. This talks a lot about integrity, I think, as well. So I'm going to read to you from Animal Frequency by Melissa Alvarez. Melissa Alvarez says, the jaguar symbolizes moving without fear into the unknown. Does it sound familiar with Aquarius 3 and all the squares to Uranus? It's always so, the synchronicity I get with these animals and the astrology and the hexagrams is always so incredible. Jaguar prefers a solitary life. It has a large territory that usually includes the territory of several females. It protects both the territory and the females of the other males, from other males, excuse me. Like most big cats, jaguar hunts on the ground, but it will also jump into the water or climb a tree and leap down upon its prey. Jaguar's unique spotted markings resemble roses and are called rosettes. When jaguar appears, it means to move forward with stealth and use your intuition and good communication skills. This isn't a time for indecision. Instead, set your goal, use your authority and strong willpower to steadily move towards accomplishing what you've set out to do. Your beauty, skill, and independent strength of character will help you make positive forward progress. You're secure, self-confident, and have high self-esteem. You're not afraid to go after what you want. You tend to take situations and people at face value instead of always looking for a hidden agenda. When you need to look deeper into a situation or are having a hard time trusting someone, use your intuition to guide you. Jaguar encourages you to reclaim your inner power through fine-tuning your intuitive abilities and soul empowerment. Jaguar's beauty is good camouflage for its intense inner fierceness. People may not realize the strength, cunning, and stealth that you carry inside. You may use your beauty to help you achieve your goals, but you'll fight for what you want or need. The jaguar assists you when you need to face your fears. It isn't afraid of the dark or going into unknown territory. Its bravery can help guide you away from the source of your fear and let you see it in a different life so you'll no longer be afraid. Jaguar helps when you want to surprise someone close to you. You are a natural leader, but at times can feel overwhelmed with the amount of work that you are required to do. Jaguar can help you see the right paths to take if you are caught at a crossroads. It can teach you how to regain your balance and forward momentum if you're feeling unsure or off-kilter. Jaguar urges you to get in the best physical shape that you can be. Strength, stamina, and powerful movements are important now. If you're not in the best physical shape, start working out, running, or doing some activity to strengthen your muscles and increase your flexibility. Well, there you go. When the forces of dystopia descend upon us, we need to be in great shape to fight back. Probably not terrible advice. But yes, you know, leap into the unknown. Recognize that the old narratives are falling away. Examine what belief systems that you hold, and don't be afraid of creating something new. Just because something has always been a certain way doesn't mean that it has to be that way in the future, whether it's true of you as an individual or how we function as a collective and a society. So I think that what a gorgeous, gorgeous animal and a great symbol for the month. How do we be assertive? How do we be stealthy in that assertiveness? But also, how do we do it in a way that is humble, a way that is in service of our communities and in service of each other? I think if we combine all of those things and let go of the old, embrace the new, co-create it together through listening and appreciating each other, I think we're going to be on the right path. I hope so. Rose says, I love animal medicines. Great book. Great books. Great books. Let the beauty you love be what you do, Rose says. I agree. Selena's Gateway says the jaguar is an eclipse animal. Oh, interesting. Well, it makes sense. We're having an eclipse. It's a great symbol for the eclipse moving up, for sure. All right, my friends. Appreciate all of you. Thanks for hanging with me today. Sorry if I've been a little rambly, but, this is the astrology. So go follow me over at Spencer Michaud on my social media accounts, Instagram, Blue Sky, etc. Go visit me at spencermichaud.com. Reach out for a reading if you want to learn what the stars have in store for you personally. Would love to work with you. All sorts of different offerings there. Go visit the store, buy some webinars, educate yourself, share that wisdom with others, and you'll be on the path. And then finally, please go support my beautiful partner, Tanya, at Third Coast Mojo, and my beautiful daughter at Sag Moon Magic. All right, my friends, that's what I've got for you. Have a great weekend. Have a great February. Thank you so much for all the beautiful comments that we have going on here. Got some good stuff. There we go. Paraguay myths, Devin says. Nice. We got a surprise birthday party for Cosmic Rose for your mom. Nice. I like it. Jaguar eats the sun. Devin says perfect. Perfect for the Jaguar energy. I love it. NL says, thank you, my friend. Looking forward to learning as much as I can about all this unfamiliar stars and planets and help me remember. Thank you. Nothing but love. Appreciate you being here, friend. Thank you for the kind words. Kindness goes a long way, and I appreciate all the feedback, my friends. So with that note, take that kindness, bring it into your communities, realize that a collective working together and trying to do things with integrity is so much more powerful than even a despotic individual who is breaking the rules to get ahead. We're stronger as a collective, even if we're trying to do things the right way. So hang in there. Hang in there. We'll get through this. And treat each other with kindness. Treat your neighbor with kindness. Protect your neighbors. And be kind to yourself, Don't beat yourself up with all this stuff that's going on. Be kind to yourself. Take a break every once in a while. Do some art. Take a bath. All those cool things. Take a walk in nature. And we'll see you the next time. Sound good? All right. Take care, friends. Peace.